Okay, Mr. Marshall, you have a quorum of the board. We have Mr. Malloy in the house with us tonight. The attendees are coming on in, and Amherst Media has joined us. You are a co-host of this meeting. My phone says it's 6:36. I think we're good to go.
All right, thank you, Pam.
You're welcome.
Welcome to the Amherst Planning Board meeting of November 19th, 2025. My name is Doug Marshall, and as chair of the Amherst Planning Board, I am calling this meeting to order at 6:36 p.m. This meeting is being recorded and is available live stream via Amherst Media. Minutes are being taken. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, extended by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, and further extended by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this Planning Board meeting will be conducted via remote means using the Zoom platform. The Zoom meeting link is available on the meeting agenda, posted on the town's website's calendar listing for this meeting, or go to the Planning Board webpage and click on the most recent agenda, where the Zoom link is listed at the top of the page. No in-person attendance of the public is permitted. However, every effort will be made to ensure the public can access the meeting in real time via technological means. In the event public access is disrupted for reasons of economic hardship or despite best efforts, we will post an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting on the town's website. Board members, I will take a roll call. When I call your name, unmute yourself, answer affirmatively, and return to mute. Bruce Colden.
I am here.
Fred Hartwell.
Oops. I am here.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Jesse Major.
Present.
I, Doug Marshall, am present. Angus McLeod.
Present.
Johanna Newman informed us she would probably be a few minutes late, and I do not see her present at this moment. Jara Smith.
Present.
Thank you all. Board members, if technical issues arise and the discussion needs to pause, it will be noted in the minutes. Please use the raise hand function to ask a question or make a comment, and I will call on you to speak after speaking, remember to remute yourself. To the general public. This is about the general public comment item, and I guess we do have one of those. So the general public comment item on our agenda is reserved for public comment regarding items not appearing later on tonight's agenda. Please be aware the board will not respond to comments during general public comment period. Public comment may also be heard at other times during the meeting when deemed appropriate by the planning board chair. Please indicate you wish to make a comment by clicking the raise hand button when public comment is solicited. If you have joined the Zoom meeting using a telephone, please indicate you wish to make a comment by pressing *9 on your phone. When called on, please identify yourself by stating your full name and address, and put yourself back into mute when finished speaking. Residents can typically express their views for up to 3 minutes or at the discretion of the planning board chair. If a speaker does not comply with these guidelines or exceeds their allotted time, their participation may be disconnected from the meeting. All right, so the time is 6:39, almost 6:40 now. First item on our agenda is a review and hopefully approval of the minutes. And we have the minutes from May 21st of this year available for review and approval. Did anyone have any comments on these minutes? Any edits or corrections? I do not see any hands from board members. All right. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes as drafted by our staff? Bruce.
So moved.
Thank you. Anyone want to be on record as seconding? I see Jesse raising 2 fingers.
Sure. Second.
Seconded by Jesse. Any other discussion on the minutes from May 21st? Jesse?
Just that I was not present, but I did watch the meeting a while ago and just want to make sure it's okay for me to vote on the minutes.
Yes. Great. All right. We'll go right into that vote. Starting with you, Bruce,
Aye.
and Fred,
Aye.
Angus,
Aye.
Jesse,
Aye.
Jara,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. Johanna is not present, so that's 6 in favor and 1 absence. Motion passes. All right, we'll go to the second item, which is our public comment item, public comment period. This is for public comment about items that do not appear later on tonight's agenda. Do we have any members of the public who are here to make a comment about something we were not expecting to talk about later on the agenda? While you are thinking about whether there's anything you want to tell us, off topic, let's say, I will read the names of the people who are appearing as the attendees tonight. They are, there's 23 at the moment: Abel Lentz, Kathy Axelson Berry, Clement Selden, Darcy Dumont, David Bossy, Deborah Uting, Just George, Hetty Startup, Ira Brick, Jamie Gruber, Janet Keller, Jennifer Taub, Joel Greenbaum, John Wynn, Ken Rosenthal, Maura Keene, Mindy Sainer, maybe, who has 2 connections to our meeting tonight, Pam Rooney, Rob Mora, Sarah Barr, Susanna, and Yannick Nichols. All right, we still have 23 members of the public. And I do see 1 hand from a member of the public. Pam, can you bring Ken Rosenthal over? And Ken, you have 3 minutes to talk about something not related to our later items on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Doug Marshall. I appreciate it. And I also want to, again, thank you for telling us who are present from the public at these meetings, because you are the only chair who does that. And I think that should be more widely done in town. So thank you again. I bring a subject that is not directly related to the 2 matters coming immediately after. I have been advised by the town council president, Lynn Griesemer, that you have inquired of the State Ethics Commission whether it would be appropriate for you to recuse yourself from those 2 matters that are coming forward, because they intimately involve consequences for UMass student residences in the town, on the campus. And I have not seen a response from that. I have not seen whether you have inquired of the commission in writing or what their response may have been in writing. I would wish you would tell us when you can whether you did inquire of the commission, what you provide us with the written request that you made. We had no opportunity, at least I did not, to comment to the commission about why I thought you should be recusing yourself from those matters. So I don't know that any others of us were able to comment to the commission too. And I would like to see what their result is. And I would hope you would tell us. More than that, I hope you will recuse yourself from those matters because of the important consequences for the University of Massachusetts, where your planning role is very well known. Thank you, sir, for taking my comment.
All right, thank you, Ken. Well, on the one hand, I just said the board is not going to respond to public comments. And actually, on the same hand, I was going to bring up that subject at the beginning of our hearings. So I think I will just let you ask you to be patient for another few seconds, probably. And when we start the next topic, I will talk about that. All right. Let's see. I don't see any other public comments. Any hands raised from the public in order to make a public comment. So maybe we should just consider that finished. And the time now is 6:45. We can go on to the next topic. The first of 3 hearings And this is a proposed Article 18 advertised for 6:35, so we are past that time. We can start. I'll note that Johanna Newman has joined us. I don't know if it was within the last minute or maybe a little bit earlier. Proposed Article 18, temporary one-year pause on building permit applications to construct multi-unit residential buildings. To consider amending the zoning bylaw by adopting Article 18, whereby the town would not accept new building permit applications for construction of any residential buildings with 4 or more dwelling units in the BG or BL zoning districts for a one-year period, or until the town council's adoption of design standards and a housing production plan. All right, so this is the point where I asked for board member disclosure. And I invite other members of the board to let me know if you want to make a disclosure. I will now respond to Mr. Rosenthal. I did receive an email from the president of the town council asking me to check in with the state ethics board. I have done that on several occasions when a similar concern, let's call it, was raised. The protocol for that is to call them and talk to the attorney of the day. I did so on Monday. Their response was that there was no obvious conflict that I would require me to recuse myself from tonight's conversation. They said I ought to file I believe it's called a 23B3 disclosure statement, which is named after the section of the Mass General Law. So I have done that. I submitted that to the president, to Lynn Griesmer and the town clerk yesterday. In that I described the 2 articles that have been proposed. I said that I work for the University of Massachusetts in campus planning. And I said that I don't have any information, let's say, about whether UMass would care one way or the other how this conversation goes. I will say many of the topics we're going to talk about tonight are similar topics we've talked about during my tenure on the board. Early in my tenure, there was a proposal to have a moratorium on building permits for residential buildings. And I participated in that. This past summer, I participated in conversations about some zoning bylaws that the board was proposing and eventually sent to the town council. And some of those conversations included some of the provisions that have been proposed for Article 19. So, and I also will mention that I've been appointed to this board 3 times, in 2020 initially, in 2021, and then again in 2024. And the objections or the concerns about my apparent conflict of interest have long predated at least 2024, if not 2021. And the council has repeatedly appointed me to this position. So I feel I can be, fair and objective. I have opinions about this topic, but I don't believe they are influenced by my employment. So that's where it stands. I do intend to participate tonight, and I guess I'll leave it at that. Sorry for going on so long. Do any other board members want to make a disclosure at this time? Okay, I don't see any hands for that. So in that case, we'll go to the presentation from the applicant. Ms. Axelson Berry, welcome to the board. You are muted at the moment.
Thank
There you
you.
Welcome.
I'm going to turn this over to Darcy.
Okay, well, you had a little bit of an echo there on your audio. Pam, sounds like we should bring Darcy Dumont over.
Yeah, I'm trying to. She actually declined.
Is she in the room there with you, Kathy?
Yes.
So you guys need to cut the audio on at least one of
Yeah.
your laptops,
Oh,
because you've got two microphones going.
just unmute.
If it's a laptop, it's usually at the top left of the keyboard. And Darcy, you need to come into the meeting. There we go.
Okay.
Connecting to audio.
Okay.
Oh, let's see. Now we've got your video. There you go. Darcy, you're still muted, but you look like you've joined us. There you go.
All right. 1 second. Okay, good evening. I'm Darcy Dumont. I'm here speaking on behalf of the 19 resident signers of the bylaw proposals, Articles 18 and 19. I'll just present about Article 18 to start, but as just a short introduction, we just want to say that residents need help from the planning board and town council. We're asking you to prioritize housing for year-round residents, both downtown and in our neighborhoods, because we have an interest in maintaining our very diverse family neighborhoods, have a personal investment in the future of our neighborhood schools and communities, have a high need for workforce, especially for town and university staff housing, and housing for families, seniors, and low and middle income residents, and need a robust year-round population for a year-round economy and thriving town. To note this at the very beginning of the presentation, we want to put our request out there is that we are going to respectfully request that you refer these two bylaw proposals to your subcommittee on planning and zoning for full consideration. Ultimately, give both proposals favorable recommendations. And we want you to, as you're listening, realize that the proponents are open to hearing about any requests for friendly amendments. A little background about the proposals in general is that that kind of refer to both proposals is that Amherst is reaching a tipping point. The balance of year-round residents and students has changed over the last 20 years, with both the year-round population reduced and the student population increased dramatically. We still have a population of about 40,000, but now we have 18,000 students living on our 3 campuses and 9,000 students living off campus here in town. That leaves only about 13,000 year-round residents. Many year-round residents have left, and we have a huge imbalance now. We've seen 859 new student-style units in multi-story buildings. Many are rented by the bed, and in the neighborhoods, an increasingly larger percentage of single and two-family homes have been bought as student rentals, often by corporate investment entities. Some of the buyers are nationwide corporations that specialize in student housing investing. We need a new look at our plans in light of these demographics, and UMass can help tremendously by housing significantly more students on campus and on nearby university properties. So with regard to Article 18,
Don't forget to say next. Slide.
Oh, next slide.
Oh,
We're not seeing any slides, Darcy.
Darcy, I'll put it up now.
All right, Pam, we're seeing your Zoom,
Yeah,
your internet browser.
I know. And I won't go down. Okay, here we go. Nate, if you can put it up quicker than me, please, by all means. Not sure.
There it is.
There it is.
We go. We're on page 3.
All right.
Okay, so the first bylaw is about protecting the downtown, Article 18. Next slide. Here's the text. The first 3 slides here, I'll just be talking about the actual text of the bylaw proposal. Article 18 says that the town will not accept new applications for building permits for residential buildings with 4 or more units in the downtown business area, that is the BG and the BL districts, for a year or until the town council approves, next slide, design standards such as sidewalk widths, green spaces, and climate resilience criteria for new multi-unit developments with building heights and setbacks required in the zoning bylaw dimensional table and with special consideration of the Hastings block model. And a housing production plan, which is already in process. The proposed amendment requires the plan to prioritize housing for year-round residents over other types of housing. Next slide. The proposed bylaw goes on to state that the pause is also needed so that the town has time to meet with UMass, negotiate an agreement to provide more housing for its own students. 5,000 beds on campus is the number that is in the bylaw proposal to relieve the strain on Amherst year-round residents. Finally, the proposal states that if the town can't accomplish the design standards and amended housing production plan and an agreement with UMass within a year, there can be a 90-day extension. So we have some details about the purpose of these articles. Article 18 lists, oh, next slide. Right. Article 18 lists 3 conditions that are needed to lift the proposed moratorium on downtown building. The first condition is design standards. The town is already in the process of analyzing our downtown building design standards so that it can make good recommendation to the planning board and town council. And in the meantime, temporary pause on applications for additional large multi-unit apartment type buildings downtown is needed to allow time for discussion and adoption. All of these conditions are actually sort of cart before the horse type of thing, where we need these before we can build and don't want to have a one-off process. Condition 2, the council is studying a housing production plan that at this point encourages, supports, and justifies a dramatic expansion of the housing for students, not only in the downtown area, but throughout the community's neighborhoods. This production plan needs to be discussed in light of the population shift that the plan itself documents. A decrease in year-round residents accompanied by a related increase in mostly undergraduate college students. As noted by one of your members at your last meeting, new housing will always go to students if no restrictions are adopted. Although dense dorm-like student housing is most lucrative for developers, we believe that buildings designed for non-students, as in cities and towns elsewhere in Massachusetts, are sufficiently lucrative and healthier for the town so that it does not become even more unbalanced. Next slide. Again, I think we might be one slide ahead. Let's see. Condition 2.
Slide 9.
Slide 10.
Yeah, so hi Darcy,
Oh,
this is
we're
Nate.
here.
So I don't know what after condition 2 I have this slide, and then the next one I don't know, am I missing something, or
No, actually, slide 10 is correct. Sorry.
okay.
Again, our year-round population is now about 13,000, less than a third of the population. According to the proposed production plan, if downtown is to be used and enjoyed by everyone, the plan needs to prioritize year-round housing, especially for low and middle income residents, instead of favoring student rentals. Next slide, please. It's reasonable to say that UMass needs to house at least 5,000 more of its students, most of whom are only here until graduation, rather than leaving them on their own, having to find places to rent by the bed for a lot of money, and simultaneously draining the town of housing for families, seniors, workforce people, and so on. Many UMass students who live off campus in Amherst and in more distant towns are in agreement and have been protesting because they want to live on campus. Students need reasonably priced, safe, and well-maintained living quarters on campus. The UMass campus is about 1,450 acres with another 2,005 or so acres in surrounding towns. The university has publicized that renovating older buildings on campus, as well as building new on Massachusetts Avenue on campus, would be feasible for housing many of its students. Next slide, please. That is basically it on Article 18.
All right, thank you, Darcy, and thank you. Is it Kitty, I think? Board members. Thoughts, discussion? Jesse.
Thanks, Doug. Thank you, Darcy, for the presentation. I guess I'm wondering if you could share how you came up with the number of 5,000 that UMass do you think is the right number? Was that based on something, or is that sort of half what's needed? Like, what went into that thinking? I'm just curious.
It is partly based on the additional 9,000 who are in the housing production plan that live outside of Amherst, a couple thousand in towns near Amherst, and others farther away, maybe in their hometowns or working online. So it was a guesstimate of what could potentially handle the numbers that want to, who have said that they want to live on campus or closer to campus. We don't have figures on that other than the ones in the housing production plan.
Okay,
So we
thanks.
didn't think that probably 9,000 would need housing on campus.
All right, Jesse. Bruce, you're next.
This is a hearing, so I'm not going to express opinions at the moment. That can wait until future meetings, perhaps. But I am interested in a question of clarification, and that has to do with the reference to the with special consideration of the Hastings block model. I don't understand what that means, but you've clearly got something in mind, so I'd like to know what that means.
It means, and we got some comments about this from the town council also, suggesting that a number of the town has been surveyed about design standards for the downtown. The Hastings block model is basically just it is a model that has been discussed at length, and it is the Hastings block, basically the block that where the Hastings store was formerly, which has a certain type of look, a certain type of materials that the buildings are made out of, certain amount of setback between the buildings and the street, and other dimensional requirements that seem like they are a good model for Amherst, and a model that is pictured. If you Google Amherst, that is what you will come up with on the internet. It will be the picture that you will see of Amherst, and that is the
Okay,
streetscape
so
across from the common.
The wide
so it's
driveway.
what you think, or what you think you know, or what will come out. It's relative to what you think should be the design standard. It has a design standard reference. That's okay. I
Yes,
think I
yeah,
understand that.
And we're not saying that it has to be that model. We're just saying with special consideration.
All right. Bruce, you all set?
Yep.
All right. Anybody else have any comments or questions, points of clarification, or shall we go to public comment? Jara, and then Angus.
Thank you for coming and presenting this information to us today. I'm curious, I have two questions. One, would you mind telling us if you consulted with any renters while designing this article? And the second is, I'm curious how you get from constraining a supply of housing benefiting moderate and low income families in my experience, constraining an already limited supply of housing will drive prices up rather than down, in which case this may inadvertently impact low and middle income housing families more. So if you could tell me, did you consult any renters in the creation of this article? And if you can help me understand a little bit more about how this moratorium benefits low and moderate income families, I would really appreciate it.
Yes, there's at least one renter in our signatories. We did not do outreach to renters. Why don't you
Okay.
pipe up?
Okay. So one of the assumptions there that you were sharing, Jara, is that if you build more, then there will be more housing for low-income people and workforce people and seniors. That might be true in a large city, but it has not been found to be true in university towns, where rather than that wonderful scenario, the more that's built, the more it's rented by students. It's specially designed for students. Most of the housing, or almost all of the housing that's been built in Amherst over the last 5 or 6 years, has been special designed for students only. They're not welcoming to families low income or middle income, and instead they're pushing those people out. In terms of, we do speak to lots of renters. I mean, neighbors. I live in Echo Hill South. I have neighbors who are renters. They always complain about having a really hard time finding a place to live, and they would like to live on the university campus. That's where their social life is. That's where their classes are. That's where they eat. They don't want to have to go back home to change their clothes. They want to live on campus. So yes, we have spoken to a number of renters and consulted with them about what they want.
All right. Is that it, Jara?
Sure.
Okay. Angus.
Thank you. So I have, I guess, two questions. One is, I think, a simple question. One is maybe more complicated. The first question is about the statement in the, I guess, elaboration of the design standards. The quote in the proposed bylaw is streetscape, sidewalk widths, green spaces, and climate resilience criteria for new multi-unit developments. I guess I'm just wanting clarity either from y'all or from the members of the design review committee that's working on these standards. Are those things all things that are going to be in the design standards? Are all of those being discussed?
That's a good question. I don't have the answer to that right now, but it is, I think that if they are not there, they should be there. It's not, it's not at a point now where it can't be amended or changed in whatever way the planning board and the town council wants it to result. And now I'm assuming that there's going to be more about safety.
Okay,
Angus,
ahead. Yeah.
I'd like to give Nate a chance to answer that since he's, I think,
Hmm.
managing those consultants. Bruce and I have been exposed to those standards, the draft, but Nate, you want to go first?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, the consultants are coming up with, standards for the right of way. So what's in the road, and all the way from like curb to building facade, what's happening with the building facade in terms of setbacks, materials, and height. They're not specifically addressing climate resilient design, so they're not getting into energy efficiency in that way. It's more about the aesthetics and what's visible from the public way. So, not necessarily, energy efficiency in terms of heating, cooling, or other things. The town does have, in Massachusetts, has, different building code and other code requirements, and we're not getting into that level of detail in terms of the building.
All right. Thank you, Nate. Angus, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. That helps. And then I think the other question that I have about the proposed amendment is, I guess I'm curious about the inclusion of discussion about the housing production plan, which seems like connected in many ways, but also a separate document that the town council is working on that the planning board has considered. And so I guess I'd like to hear a little bit more about the justification for including. It seems to me to be the proposed bylaw is advocating for changes to the housing production plan to shift from a strategy of looking to increase housing for many different kinds of residents to, I guess it says prioritizing opportunities for year-round mixed income residents instead of additional housing intended for students in the downtown or in our neighborhoods. So I guess I'm just wanting to learn a little bit more about the inclusion of the housing production plan.
Well, the housing production plan obviously has not yet been adopted by the town council. So right now it has gone through the CRC and it is, I think, going to be at some point fairly soon going to be voted on by the town council. There are a few sentences in there that really commit the plan to expanding all types of housing. And as I think many of you know, that when housing is expanded without having any prioritization process or restrictions, then in Amherst, it has gone, most of it, to student housing. So, and as a result, we're losing our year-round residents. So that's why we want the housing production plan to recognize that fact. It does, actually. That's where we got all of our numbers. The numbers about losing year-round residents. And so that's why we feel like there needs to be a redirection in favor of making sure that year-round residents have adequate housing.
Can I ask one clarifying question? And maybe this is for Doug. Did the planning board has endorsed the housing production plan, has it not?
Yes, we recommended it to council.
Okay, as it's currently written, not with these changes.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
That preceded our proposed bylaws, though. So.
Right. Jara and then Jesse.
Thank you. sorry, I had one other question. Are there currently ongoing conversations with UMass to house 5,000 students? I'm curious, if there's a history of that conversation. I don't know, actually, frankly, if this is a question for Doug or for Nate or for the presenters, but I'm curious, what's the history of that and the feasibility of that kind of agreement coming together in the next year?
That's the best
Nate, do
question.
you want to talk about how the town interacts with UMass?
Sure, yeah, I mean, I don't, know the answer, Jara. So I know the town manager and the town manager's office meets with UMass quite frequently, discusses various topics, whether, it could be housing, economic development, a range of things. And so, I don't know what is, what kind of conversations they've had. UMass did put out a request for interest, or I'm not sure exactly what it was, to look at housing on campus. Have someone assess the housing and the needs. And I'm not sure where, the status of that, or what what that would lead to in the future in terms of conversation. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, housing's a hot topic in town. I'm assuming it's part of the conversation in terms of actually committing to a certain number. I'm not sure there's, what kind of conversation there is around that.
Go ahead.
All right, Jara,
We,
or go ahead.
well, we would really like to see more open conversation about UMass's plans and its how many students it's planning to accept for, the near future. What they see, whether they think that there's going to be a demographic cliff, in which case a lot of housing that would be built, special design for students, would then be, potentially renovated into housing for other people, except that the designs that they're using are not easily converted into housing for families or seniors or workforce people. They're really designed for students. We would love more open conversation. And my understanding is that UMass has identified several buildings on campus that they would be able to renovate into housing. Some of them are old dorms, but we don't know anything about it. We would like to know about it. And also that they've identified Massachusetts Avenue as a prime place for more new housing, but if they're the kind that Fieldstone is, nobody can apparently afford to live there. Yeah, so we agree with you. We'd like more information too.
Can definitely agree on that. Thank you, Darcy. Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Jara. Jesse.
Thanks, Doug. What's my question? My question is about this idea of designing for specific populations. As I think you all know, is something we often talk about a lot, certainly on the subcommittee, often at the full board. And what often the conclusion of that conversation is, it's nearly impossible to put in zoning that gets a specific use, right? And so if you all have come up with examples of that, suggestions about that, I guess I'm asking you to send them our way to be part of our conversations. While that's come up and there's a big audience here, I'd also say the subcommittee is happy to have input, and our schedule's on the web as well. So I'd encourage any of you to join when you're able. Thanks.
Thank you.
Nice.
All right, Jesse, Angus.
Thanks. So I'm sorry, I have one more question about the housing production plan. So if I'm understanding this, the bylaws it's currently written, no building would be allowed in the BG and the BL zoning districts for either a year or until both of the conditions are met about the design standards. But then also there would be a change to the housing production plan. Correct?
Yes, and meetings with UMass about housing more students on campus.
So I guess that maybe is a question. That the two bullets seem to imply that those are two conditions.
Yes.
that must be met, but the UMass section seems to read differently. It doesn't seem like it's a requirement. It seems like it's a justification. Is everything after the two bullets but before the purpose part of the requirements that must be met in order for the temporary pause to be lifted?
My answer to that would be yes. It is, it's part of the bylaw. Yes, it's not a bullet, so that does make it seem a little different.
This is a really good question, and this is the kind of thing that causes us to want the Housing and Zoning Subcommittee of the Planning Board to really examine these things, because you guys are much more expert than we are. And yeah, and you can consult more easily than we can with the planning department and other professionals. We would appreciate that very much.
And like I said earlier, we are very interested in working with that subcommittee and, you know, having you bring to us possibilities for friendly amendments, because we are very open.
But just to clarify, the intent is that there would be an agreement with UMass, but in order to lift the pause on building in the BG and BL.
That is what it says.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
All right. Any more board questions for the moment? All right, why don't we take a round of public comment? We have a whole lot of people in the audience. I see one hand up already. Members of the public, if you would like to comment on this proposal, this is Article 18. Would you please raise your hand? I'd just like to get a sense of how many people we have that want to speak to it. If it's a huge number, we may just go down to 2 minutes of comments. All right, so at the moment we have 5 hands up. I will say, since we have 3 hearings this evening, I'm intending to try to parcel out our time roughly evenly between all 3. If we assume this is a 3-hour meeting, which is kind of par for the course for our planning board meetings, my hope is that we can finish this up, say by 1/4 or 10 of 8, and then go to the second topic, which may be a little bit shorter or maybe longer. But I want to save time for the last one, since staff is interested in us making sure we have a reasonable amount of time to discuss that. All right, so there are now just 4 hands up to be making comments. Why don't we limit ourselves to 2 minutes each? I think that's enough to get your main point across. Pam, would you start with Josh Lewis? And Josh, when you come over, would you give us your name and your street address in Amherst?
Pam, do you want me to bring the attendees in? Is that?
Oh, I thought you were going to do that, and I've got the timer. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Thank
Josh,
you.
you can unmute yourself.
Hello, Josh.
Hi, how you doing? I actually do not live in Amherst, but I am a former UMass student. I graduated in 2023, and honestly, I heard about this and I thought it was so ridiculous that I just had to come back, because I've spent hundreds of hours researching this housing issue. It's something I'm extremely passionate about, and you know, I was someone that was actually lucky to find affordable housing at UMass because I was persistent and I knew people. But at the end of the day, like, that's not everybody can do that. A lot of times there's people that are commuting for hours, and people that are cramming into apartments that, you know, They're really not meant for. Like, you think that banning or not allowing student market rate housing will somehow help families? It won't. What will happen is that students, they'll go and they will rent single families in neighborhoods that would be going to families, right? And so this will especially harm low income families. And the past couple of years, this just keeps getting worse and worse. And this is seen as the vacancy rate is less than 1%, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong. And I believe a healthy vacancy rate is much higher. Additionally, I actually asked, when I was UMass, I asked Chancellor Subaswamy directly why they did this public-private partnership of privatized dorms. And he said that they reached their borrowing limit. And I believe they've only built 1,500 new housing units, beds in the past 10 years. So you want them to build 5,000? I mean, I want them to build new housing, right, on campus. I agree, but it's just that I don't think that's something that's financially feasible for them. And now you're trying to make it worse. Like you're screwing over. I'm sorry. I'm like, a little bit like worked up here, but this is, I'm very passionate about this. And I've met a lot of people that were very negatively affected by by this. So you can't say that like you're progressive when you support exclusionary zoning when, sorry, my time up.
Yeah, your time's up. You can finish your sentence.
You can't say you're progressive, you're socialist, and you can't say you support working people when you oppose housing. Because at the end of the day, another housing unit built is another place for people to live.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, next, let's bring over Deborah Uting. Hello, Deborah. You can unmute yourself
Okay.
and your street address.
Yes, my name is Deborah Udding. I live at 32 Gray Street in downtown Amherst. My husband and I moved here about 3 years ago. We love Amherst. We are retired federal employees, and we bought a beautiful house. But our street is just now, the houses are being bought up by investors and students. We feel like we're in the minority, the full-time residents, permanent residents. And it's just becoming every year, just in the 3 years we've been here, all the houses are being bought up, and the prices are quite high, actually. And we don't know who the owners are. We just know that it's very noisy, and we don't want to have to move. And I think a lot of families have been in this position. So I'm talking about existing houses in neighborhoods that, I think traditionally have been mixed with students, and families are now being, just taken over by students. And I agree that there's a shortage of housing, and I understood what the student was saying, but I think that there needs to be a plan for either owners occupying. I think there was something in the works at one point where an owner occupied the residence so that, these houses were not just being neglected, where parties were not happening constantly, because it is hard for families or retired people to live here when the neighborhoods are just being changed over. So I think there needs to be some kind of plan in place to maintain a balance. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Deborah. All right, Nate, let's bring over Pamela Rooney. Pam, give your name, your street address, and tell us whether you're speaking as a counselor or a private citizen.
Hi, Pam Rooney, 42 Cottage Street. I am speaking with both hats. I wanted to, first of all, support referring this for more discussion to the Housing Subcommittee. Secondly, I would like to let everyone know that being a counselor or not does not give us any additional information on what UMass is planning for its future development. The only piece of information that I've heard recently is that UMass is going to focus its upcoming efforts on housing to focus strictly on renovation and replacement of existing dorms. So I would speak to Josh's point about public-private partnerships and ask, really and truly, what is the cost to UMass for a P3 project? They give the land, yes, maybe some utilities. That should not affect the borrowing capacity of the university. Interestingly, in Rhode Island, the town of Narragansett, there recently has been an effort by the university there to do a P3 project and build 1,100 more beds on the campus, which is bringing great joy to the residents of Narragansett, who feel a very similar pressure to the overwhelming number of students in their community. So thank you for continuing to discuss this. There's a lot wrapped up in what's trying to happen here. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Pam. And finally, Janet Keller, let's bring her over. Hello, Janet. Oh, we lost Janet. Nate, I guess there's Janet again. You want to bring her, try her again? Hey, Janet, can you unmute yourself? Tell us whether you can hear us.
Hey, Janet, you're unmuted. We can't hear you. Janet, we're gonna disable your talking and you can try again in a minute.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead to the next person? Looks like it's Ken Rosenthal. Hello, Ken.
Thanks again, Mr. Chairman. We're asking you to refer this to the subcommittee so that there can be more opportunity for public involvement. A 2-minute comment in a meeting like this really doesn't give us a chance to present evidence or have a reasonable back and forth discussion, especially since you're not allowed to comment on our comments while we're making them. I just want to make a couple of factual points to the first person who spoke. It turns out that the notion that building more apartments in town would bring down the rental prices for everybody has been proven to be absolutely false. In fact, what happens practically is because those buildings are expensive, the developers who set the rental prices have to set them higher because of the current building expenses of construction. And once those rents go higher, all the other absentee landlords in town look at those rents and raise their rents too. That's what's happened in Amherst. So it brings the prices up, not down. Second of all, let's recognize that there is a practically, and I use that word practically, infinite demand from students to live in the town of Amherst because there is not enough room on the campus and there are so many students who live elsewhere and would like to live closer to where they go to school. The fact is that there are faculty members and staff members of the university who also want to live in town. And it's those people that we would like to see have the opportunity to be able to afford to live here in town, to live here year round, to register their cars in town so that the excise taxes come to the town. These are arguments that we'd like to make and discussions we'd like to have in more detail. And that's why we'd like you to refer these matters to subcommittees so that there can be more and extensive conversations over time. And a moratorium for just a year or a little more than a year is hardly a delay in construction these days. So very much for giving me the chance to comment.
Thank you, Ken. All right, so hands have continued to pop up. As I mentioned, I do want to try to parcel out our time this evening. There are now another 4 hands.
Mhm.
I guess we'll continue with 2 minutes, but I want to, after these 4, I probably will cut it back to a shorter period of time. Okay, Nate, you want to try Janet again? Janet Keller.
Can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go
Great.
ahead.
Thanks. I just want to support the recommendation to refer the proposal to the Housing Subcommittee and to expand the opportunities that we have for exploring in a more open way the ideas that would create more housing for a variety of people, not only students, but couples, families, individuals, non-student individuals. And so I think the moratorium could help with that. Thanks.
Mhm.
Thank you, Janet. Nate, how about George? Hello, George. If you can unmute yourself, give us your full name, your street address.
Yeah, my name is George. Can you hear me?
Yes.
George Utting, Utting, same as Deborah.
Okay.
32 Gray Street, Amherst, 01002. And we've been here for 3 years, as Deborah said. I sort of want to echo to some extent what she said, and then also follow up a little bit on what Ken Rosenthal was pointing out. I think more discussion is needed. There's a whole complex of issues that are coming out in this conversation, and there's no simple solution to them, I don't think. So there's that. So I think more discussion is merited and really needed. My observation as a now 3-year resident of this town is that the neighborhoods in this town are overwhelmed by the students. If you listen on a weekend night in the fall and in the spring, you can hear loud music, noises, yelling people, at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't know if all of you live in town, if you hear all of that, but I can tell you it goes on. And it's we're not just on our block, but it is on our block. So there's that. And the other thing is we have some of the highest property taxes in the state as a rate. And, we paid twice the property tax we paid where we lived in Fairfax County, and we get half the services. So I think that there needs to be a look at what is this town, who is the town for, and what do you want to do, and what kind of vision do you have for moving forward? If there are only 13,000 permanent residents in this town, there needs to be some sort of sense of how those residents are included in making decisions about what goes on around us on a continual basis, year in and year out, and how that's being managed. So I think I appreciate the opportunity to be able to attend this meeting and hear what you all have to say about it. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Nate, Josh, let's bring Josh back, but Josh, could you please limit yourself to 1 minute?
Yes, I just have a couple more points I would like to make. I just have it in a note here. So someone said disagree with my argument that building more lowers prices, but I actually have there's 50 studies which say that building houses of all kinds lowers prices and slows rent growth. Look up New Rochelle, look up Minneapolis. But anyways, the simple solution is to build, baby, build. Honestly, people, you might not like it. It might be kind of uncomfortable for you, but that's what the data does support.
Okay, 30 seconds.
And yeah, if you allow for more development, there'll be more tax revenue for services, and taxes can be lower. In Watertown, look up in Watertown, Massachusetts. They just did a ton of development, especially commercial. Taxes went down by $1,000 a year, and they had like a $5 million surplus. And also, it's just like, I don't know, this is kind of like a rough maybe slightly just like one thing to say. If you don't want to be around students, don't live in Amherst. Like, I don't know what to say.
All right, thank you, Josh. Thanks for listening in. And Mindy Sainer. Welcome, Mindy. Unmute yourself, give us your street address, and you have 2 minutes.
Hi. I live on 20 Dickinson Street and I own a dance studio on 20 Dickinson Street. The zoning there is Business Village Center. And I also own an interior design business. My office is located on Main Street in downtown Amherst. I actually sit in my office every day looking out at the town common in downtown Amherst, and I walk into town every day looking for maybe buying some food, which I cannot do. You can't buy food in downtown Amherst. I go to the farmer's market every Saturday. That only operates through December. They don't have a permanent place to run the farmer's market in the winter, so there is no farmer's market. So those things bother me as someone, excuse me, who's lived here for 35 years. I've seen just a diminishing of what one can accomplish in the downtown. And I've seen a lot of really, speaking as a designer, hideous buildings being built in the downtown that do not use New England vernacular architecture. They're not holding up very well either. So they're getting more hideous. So I'm agreeing with Ken Rosenthal, Pamela Rooney. I'm agreeing with taking a look at design standards for the downtown, excuse me, and for more examination by the Housing and Zoning Subcommittee so that any additional housing can be analyzed. And, you know, that this should really, we need a town plan, a fully examined town plan. That's what I would like to advocate.
All right, thank you, Mindy. All right, so that was the last hand for public comment. Time is 7:43. So board members, we've heard a lot of comment about referring this, about the need for a lot more conversation. I guess seems like there are a couple of ways to think about this. One, we can simply continue the hearing and continue the conversation at another meeting. We could, refer to or recommend to town council that the proposal not be enacted on, and simply agree that it should be discussed. These topics be discussed in the housing subcommittee and the rest of the planning board, as long as it takes, or some other proposal. Let's see, Bruce and then Angus.
Well, I'd like to propose what many of the comments suggested, which it refers to the Housing Subcommittee. There was a thought expressed by one or more that would allow for more two-way conversation. And it is true that public attendees at the Housing Subcommittee meetings that we've been having, we do typically invite them to join in the discussion, but that's typically because there's 1 or 2 people there. Whether if we had a showing like this, or even 10 or so, it wouldn't necessarily mean that a reference to the Housing Subcommittee would guarantee a dialogue, but it might be a little more so. Also, I would probably like to express my views, which are rather skeptical as to the wisdom of this, and even more skeptical as to the need, and see whether any of the petitioners can persuade me that I'm missing something. And I don't want to do that tonight because we don't have time. But I think that I just don't see the need for this. I think it's unnecessary, and I think it's taking up time. However, the big need, or the one need that might actually be worth the effort and trigger is if this discussion can somehow loosen the decision making of the UMass to engage in some kind of PPP initiative. That I think would be a positive development, and it might especially be positive if our proposed overlay for North Amherst, which is essentially trying to do something similar, but not on UMass land, fails, in which case there would be reason to pursue this route even further. So for those reasons, I would encourage that we agree to discuss this, continue this in discussion at the Housing Subcommittee. But Jesse, I'd defer to you. If you have a good reason not to, I would be interested in knowing whether I should withdraw the motion.
So we do have the option to refer this, to recommend something to town council. And we've opened this hearing, so we will need to either continue this hearing until the Housing Subcommittee is ready to come back to us and talk about how we should recommend to town council, or
Okay, so
or we don't just leave it perpetually, long-term open. We close it and we continue the conversation separately. But so
well, the motion could be, I could take that as a friendly amendment, Doug, and that the motion could be to continue the meeting and to refer it to the Housing Subcommittee.
okay. So if we were to continue, I think we would continue to the second meeting in December, which is an open, unagended meeting at the moment. Nate, am I right? That's the 17th of December?
Correct, right. There's time on the agenda to continue this hearing. So, it'd be a full board hearing, continued again until that
Right.
evening.
So if we continued to 6:35, we could do that. And in the meantime, the Housing Subcommittee could meet once or more, and we could see where they're at. And, those who want a more transparent conversation, I do invite you to come to our meetings. And I want to correct one thing Ken Rosenthal said earlier. The comments that are made during general public comment period, the board doesn't respond to. But the comments that are made during a hearing like this, the board is entirely able to comment and have a conversation about. So feel free to come to these meetings. So Bruce, why don't we come back to your motion, however it forms? Or do you want to just keep that? Do you want a second to continue to 6:35 on December 17th? And
well, I'd invited Jesse to second, giving him therefore the opportunity to explain why it was not a good idea.
Okay, well then we'll leave that sitting on the table. Angus, and then Johanna, and then Jesse.
Yeah, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with pushing this to the Housing and Zoning Subcommittee. In that I'm particularly concerned about the parts of this proposal around requiring UMass to take action and the town to come to an agreement with UMass. I'm not sure that's something that a bylaw should specify. And then I'm also uncomfortable with the kind of circumventing and changing the housing production plan, especially when, at least based on what the plan itself says, they had 4 public meetings with the Amherst Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, 2 with the planning board, 4 stakeholder interviews, 2 sets of community meetings, tabling at the Amherst Block Party, a public survey, a scenario planning workshop, and then a public comment period. So I guess it feels like we are trying to, this proposal is attempting to circumvent a set of priorities that it seems like we've established are important to this community. So I think I'd like to see the Article 19 referred to the Housing and Zoning Subcommittee. I think there's a lot to discuss there, but I feel like this is not a sound use of our time, and at least based on the conversation before the town council, it doesn't sound like there's any pending building permits in the BG or the BL, unless I'm mistaken, Nate.
That certainly that was the answer during the town council meeting.
Is that still the case?
Nate?
Sure. So just quickly on that, yeah, there's no, permits or projects that I am aware of, but the moratorium would be for a year. So just, who knows what would happen, within that time frame, but there's nothing imminent
Okay.
that I'm
Okay.
aware of.
So I don't think that this is a great use of the subcommittee's time, but I would
Okay.
also defer if the board votes otherwise, then I'll happily consider it.
Okay, thank you. I'll just remind you guys, we're getting toward 8 o'clock and I'm already behind the schedule that I was hoping to follow. So, Johanna?
Thanks. I don't think we should refer Article 18 to the Housing Subcommittee. I think a moratorium on building new housing actually runs counter to our housing production goals, and I think there's a real opportunity cost to spending time on this proposal as opposed to spending time advancing some of the solutions that actually will expand housing options, drive down costs, and alleviate the pressure that existing neighborhoods feel with regard to student housing. So I'd actually like to propose a motion that we close this public hearing and recommend to the town council that they don't adopt Article 18.
All right, so we have a motion on the table from Bruce, and
Do we? Okay.
yeah, and it hasn't been seconded, but let's give Jesse a chance to talk before we have too many motions on the floor. Jesse?
Great, thanks. I'll try and be brief. I'm open to the idea of subcommittee discussing this. I think we can carve out a small amount of time. I think there are some, in my view, sort of non-starters. I don't think it's ready to go for council. I don't think that will go anywhere there as it is, in large part the UMass piece. That being said, again, I think we can find an amount of time to discuss if we think that's important to flesh out a little more. I also definitely agree there's a lot of things in both of these articles that we have discussed that I hope we continue to discuss. I do think Article 19, a lot of the content is very appropriate for us to dig in a bit more to make some friendly amendments as it was proposed. And the other general comment I would say, just for all the commenters we just heard from, thank you for your comments. And I completely agree. This is very complicated. There's not a simple solution. That's why all of us are on the board trying to work on this. And again, if you can't make our subcommittee meeting, send me an email. We are open to all ideas and want all of the input. See what comes out of that. So for the motions, I think I would second Bruce's motion to bring it to the subcommittee. I think we can do a good job of keeping it concise.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor with a second. Any discussion about the motion to continue this hearing to the middle of December? And I think you had some language about referring the matter to the housing subcommittee in the interim. So, Bruce, your hand is up.
Let me just ask you, Jesse, would you be more favored to keeping the motion as a continuation to the December meeting and not the reference to the housing subcommittee? My reason is I don't want to take time now to engage in the kind of inquiry that I had, and I'm just looking for because I think we need to explore as a board how we feel about this, and we've begun to do that, but we don't have time to do it now. So I'd be happy to defer. We could vote. Why don't we vote? I'll keep my motion. We can choose to spend 5 or 10 minutes at the housing subcommittee meeting if we decide to. So this is not a commitment to a prolonged discussion. The motion stands. Thank you, Doug, for helping me figure that out.
Okay. All right. All right. I don't see any other hands. Why don't we go ahead and vote on the motion to continue this hearing on Article 18 to December 17th at 6:35 with expectation that the Housing Subcommittee will deliberate in some manner or not about it in the interim. All right, Bruce, you can vote first. And Fred?
Aye.
Angus?
Nay.
Okay, Jesse?
Aye.
Johanna?
Nay.
Jara?
Nay.
And I'm actually a nay. So the motion fails.
Mhm.
All right, so some of those who voted nay may want to offer a different motion for consideration. All right, Johanna, you got your hand up first. Angus is right behind you, just so you know.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'd like to propose a motion that we close the public hearing and recommend to the town council that they don't adopt Article 18.
All right, thank you. Angus?
Second.
All right. Any conversation, comments, questions?
Doug, Jesse has his hand up.
Oh, thank you, Jesse. Go ahead.
Thanks. I guess I would just point out to my fellow board members, both the subcommittee and the full board, we have had discussions about wanting there to be standards for new big projects. I don't necessarily agree with everything in this article as it's written, but I view it as an opportunity to raise that topic before other large projects get commenced in a way that might not happen if tomorrow some application comes in. Thanks.
Okay. Bruce?
I guess I'll just go on record as believing that because I've been a part of the design standards discussion for the past 2 years, there in that I think the planning board and presumably the zoning board is well set to be. We are well able to deliberate and be guided by those standards. I don't understand the need for a formal decision by the town council to promulgate these, whether it be the housing production plan or these design standards. They exist in all, essentially, and we can use them. We don't need to declare a moratorium in order to get them promulgated, in order to make them more useful. That delay isn't going to, in my view, make enough difference, or probably any difference, because we know what we're dealing with. I mean, it may well be that many people in town who haven't been engaged as we have for the past year in the production plan and the design standards, perhaps I can understand that they might be concerned and think that they might need a year to catch up. But I don't believe that the permit granting agencies do, and I think it demonstrates a lack of confidence in commitment that in these town boards. I don't think we need this moratorium in order to do our job and in order to do essentially what the petitioners are proposing. Because if the petitioners had been listening, and many of them have, to our deliberations over the past year or two, they would know that we share every one of these concerns, these goals, these objectives. There's no daylight between our aspirations and the petitioner's aspirations. So we don't need this disciplinary action in order to help us do our job. So I would probably not support probably support a motion to not recommend, but I'm perhaps ready to have this discussion at a continuation. But I don't think we have time to do it tonight. That's
All right, thank you, Bruce. I will mention, Bruce, that the design standards has not been a public process. The portion of the discussions that you and I have participated in as part of a working group that was convened by the consultant. So we're farther along on understanding where those are at than other members of this board and certainly the public.
well, that's true,
Although-
but it
although I
won't-
believe that the drafts will be becoming public soon.
Yeah,
Nate's shaking his head, yes.
exactly.
So, you know, they're about ready to be released, but you and I are farther along,
Yeah, we don't need a moratorium
right?
to achieve
Okay.
the objectives of the petitioners.
Right. Okay, Darcy, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to mention that the bylaw proposal doesn't require a one-year moratorium if the conditions are met. So it could be a 1-month moratorium. It could be a very short time. It's just the leverage needed to fulfill the conditions, that's all. It isn't necessarily a year.
Okay, thank you.
Mm.
Angus?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing in response to what Bruce said. I agree with almost everything you said, Bruce. I think there's one thing that I would disagree on, which is I think there is a misalignment in the priorities that the planning board has set forth and the intent behind the at least this Article 18. And that is that the planning board, through endorsing the housing production plan, has said that we believe that we want to increase additional housing for all kinds of residents. And that includes senior citizens, it includes families, it includes low income residents, it includes middle income residents, it includes students. So I do, and this article explicitly states that they want to change the housing production plan to not prioritize student housing in any capacity. And so I do think that's a misalignment in goals. And one of the reasons why I'm uncomfortable with pursuing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Angus. All right, I'm afraid in the interest of time, I'm going to call the question. So we have a vote or a motion on the table to recommend to town council that this proposal not be pursued and to close the hearing. Can we go through with the vote? Starting, why don't we start again with you, Bruce?
Well, having had my say, I vote yes.
And
All
what?
right. Fred?
Aye.
Angus?
Aye.
Jesse?
Nay.
Johanna?
Aye.
Jara?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. So we have 6 in favor, 1 opposed. That motion passes. All right. Time is 8:04. We customarily take a 5-minute break at this time. Is everybody comfortable doing that, realizing that we have 2 more hearings to go when we come back? All right, I'm seeing heads nod, so certainly be back here by 10 after 8, sooner if you can manage it. Thank you. All right, the time is 8:09. I'm speaking to anybody that can hear me. If you're ready to come back into the meeting, please turn on your camera. Let me know you're back. Still have a couple of board members who have not returned. All right. Kitty, I do see your hand. I will wait until we're all back before you speak.
It's just that Darcy isn't on.
Pam, did Darcy get removed? You are muted.
Okay, she's not removed that I'm aware of, but let me look.
Well, I see her in the attendees and I don't see her on the panel, so
Okay.
we want to bring her back again. All of our board members are back. As soon as we have the technical issues resolved, there she is. So
Yep.
Darcy, there you go.
Thank you. That was my fault.
Not a problem. All right, looks like everyone's back. Time is 8:11. And we'll go ahead with the next hearing on the agenda. In accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, this public hearing has been duly advertised and notice thereof has been posted and is being held for the purpose of providing the opportunity for interested citizens to be heard regarding proposed Article 19, zoning for livability, affordability, and balance in single and two-family home neighborhoods. To consider amending the zoning bylaw by adopting Article 19, whereby the town shall preserve and support single and two-family housing owned or rented by year-round residents, prioritize student housing located on Amherst campuses, and disincentivize the sale of single and two-family homes to investors by defining a student home, adopting minimum distance requirements, and consider rent stabilization and limit student housing in single and two-family homes to arterial streets in all zoning districts. All right, board member disclosure. I simply am going to say that I have filed a 23B form, and I did talk to the State Ethics Board, as I said earlier. Are there other disclosures from anyone? I don't see any hands. All right, Darcy, we'll go ahead and you can make your presentation on this proposal.
Okay, so we're on the same presentation, slide 13.
All right, Nate, thank you for bringing that up. And I think you're good to go, Darcy.
Okay. All right, so the second bylaw amendment is Article 19, and it is entitled Protecting Neighborhoods. Article 19 says that the town should zone for livability, affordability, and balance in those neighborhoods that consist of single-family and two-family homes, both owner-occupied homes and renter homes. Year-round residents should be prioritized, with more undergraduate students housed on campus. The town should disincentivize selling single-family and two-family homes in neighborhoods to limited liability real estate investors, and it should do so by taking these steps. So, slide 15. First, we don't want to have me on both of these. First, adopt a definition of student housing. The definition in the proposed bylaw is that which was passed last year by this body, the Planning Board. It states, A student home is defined as any dwelling unit within a one-family dwelling, a one-family dwelling with an apartment, or a two-family dwelling that's occupied by persons who are unrelated by blood, marriage, or legal adoption and are attending undergraduate or graduate programs offered by colleges or universities, including those on a semester break or summer break from studies. The residents of a student home typically share living expenses and may live and cook as a single housekeeping unit. Student homes include living arrangements where the property owners or their family members are residents of the dwelling unit. Student homes do not include fraternities, sororities, or rooming houses. So I'm sure that sounds familiar to all of you. Next slide. So after defining a student home, the proposal requires that the town disincentivize the sale of single and two-family homes to real estate investors by adopting 3 tools. First, it would require minimum distance requirements between student houses on local and collector streets. Second, it would require the town to study the possibility of rent stabilization. Third, student rentals of single-family houses would be limited to main streets, principal arterial streets like College Street, Main Street, and North Pleasant Street. There are 11 in total of the principal arterial streets. Next slide. So now we'll talk about the reasons, the purposes. Slide 18. The purpose of this is to create a reasonable balance between housing for year-round residents, residents who put down roots in their community, and for students. If we want to maintain and improve our public schools, municipal services, civic participation, and develop a more robust downtown for all ages and incomes, we need to maintain our long-term neighborhoods. And that means we need to disincentivize LLC real estate investor purchases of and ownership of so many student houses in these neighborhoods. Next slide, please. A little background on real estate speculation. Amherst has about 5,200 single-family homes, 680 of which are rented, and 137 of those are student rentals owned by LLC real estate investors, times 4 for the number of students who are in these houses. Ownership of homes for the purpose of profit drives up the cost of ownership and the cost of renting, and changes stable neighborhoods into student-oriented neighborhoods that lack diversity of age and civic engagement. Amherst rents are now comparable to rents in Somerville. Next slide, please. Adding a definition of student home to our zoning bylaw is the only way to keep track of our actual housing data and to regulate student housing. It's necessary for the town to be transparent and accountable about student housing and to be able to regulate it. State College Pennsylvania has had a licensing program for student homes since 2013. Town residents and leadership were recognized that an imbalance between housing for students and housing for full-time, or what they call lifelong residents, was damaging the town's economy and livability. State College recognized the need to regulate off-campus student housing so that both students and long-term residents would thrive. First, they had to define what a student home is in the context of dealing with them. We do too. And just an additional note, it's the planning board did intentionally use this language. They made some changes to address concerns of non-traditional families and households. Next slide, please. The disincentives listed in Article 19 are tools to steer LLC speculation away from our captive student rental market here. There are other tools, but the majority on the council has not adopted any zoning protections for our neighborhoods. It's time to do so. We know that there have been discussions in the past of some of these topics and of the overall issue of UMass responsibility for providing housing for its students that are enrolled but without housing. As you mentioned in the last hearing, we realize that you've all talked about all of this a lot. Next slide. Some of the advantages of adopting the tools to disincentivize real estate investment in our neighborhoods are they preserve the diversity and stability of family neighborhoods. They bring down the cost of housing in general. They reduce nuisance issues. They encourage investment in properties by mission-driven developers like community land trusts. and other nonprofit developers, as well as private developers who focus on neighborhood stability and see housing as a right. This last bullet is especially so with rent stabilization. Next slide, please. Our first tool is minimum distance requirements. Like other approaches, they mitigate nuisance issues, preserve and promote diversity and stability, and reduce pressure from speculators competing for an advantage. Requiring some distance between student rentals helps prevent the town from reaching the tipping point where a street shifts from mostly people and families establishing roots and long-term connections to mostly transient students who don't call Amherst their home, but the place they live until graduation. It also reduces pressure from real estate investors. This is not anti-student, it is pro-stable year-round community. Specific distance requirements vary by the density in the residential districts. Next slide, please. Slide 24. Rent stabilization stabilizes neighborhoods. As a college town, Amherst neighborhoods are subject to studentification, which again happens when the tipping point is reached and large swaths of family homes are converted into student housing. By controlling the rate and timing of rent increases, rent stabilization can help preserve the residential nature and economic diversity of community neighborhoods. I think there was some misunderstanding with the language of this particular bullet in that when we added the word consider, we meant study. So next slide. The third tool is limitation of student home rentals to principal arterial roads. The housing production plan under discussion names the Orchard Valley and East Amherst neighborhoods as those with the lowest median home values. Neighborhoods with low home values are naturally targeted by LLC investors as financially desirable for student house rentals. Expensive homes in out-of-the-way places are not as desirable for speculators. Limiting new student rentals to principal arterial roads is one way to consolidate student rentals on main streets, specifically the 11 principal arterial streets classified as such by the DPW. Existing rental homes would be allowed as student homes for a period of 10 years. And we were advised to not use the term grandfathering in because of what it means in history. In sum, these proposals are offered to encourage stable, affordable homes for diverse long-term populations rather than ceding control to market-only student housing solutions or to benefit the university and colleges. Expansion of a university such as UMass can intensify speculation and result in displacement in the adjacent communities. Next slide. One, we felt we needed to mention in a final note that it's really not possible to avoid the connection between the recent devastating fire at Olympia Place and these zoning proposals, in particular the request for a moratorium on new buildings downtown until we've adopted design guidelines, a housing plan prioritizing housing for year-round residents, and agreement with UMass to house more students on campus. We asked the planning board and the town to rethink your plan to fast-track additional housing for UMass students in dorm-like buildings and to take a new look at those that are planned or already built in the downtown. Do they have adequate infrastructure for fire safety, water, sewer, roads, transportation, and climate resilience? We ask that you redirect your efforts to building new, sustainable, safe housing for seniors, town, and university staff and low and moderate income residents who need it to stem the flow of year-round residents out of Amherst. This next slide is just a section of the housing production plan that has a statement about our water supply. The water department manages and maintains the town's public drinking water infrastructure, pumping an average of 3 million gallons of water per day. The water treatment system has enough capacity to meet the current demands of the town population and any growth in the foreseeable future. DPW asserted that current water usage is far from reaching its capacity and that new developments will unlikely strain its existing infrastructure or reduce its ability to treat and distribute water to the public. So we just felt we needed to express that connection. And next slide, again, we respectfully request the planning board to refer proposed Article 19 to the subcommittee on housing and zoning and to ultimately give 19 a favorable recommendation. We are very amenable to discussing friendly amendments to the proposals during this process. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Darcy. All right, board members. Questions of clarification for our presenters? Jesse?
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Darcy, for the presentation. Couple questions, a couple comments, I think. First question, and this came up briefly previously also. One of the last points you made was you're asking us to stop, quote, fast tracking of higher density student designed buildings. As I think you know, we've spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out where might be appropriate for those options. And what also came up earlier with some of the comments is there's clearly disputing opinions about how to solve the problem. And I don't think there's one solution, but I think everyone would agree more housing is part of the solution. Hence, I think the resistance to the moratorium. And so I'm curious about if you all are suggesting we should, you don't support the overlay idea of identifying specific regions near UMass that the subcommittee or other groups think would be a good solution to put that higher density housing that is designed for students, because that's how I read that section. So I'd love to hear why you're opposed to that, but you are supporting on UMass land that's right next to one of these areas or two of these areas we've identified. So I'm surprised by the resistance there. I'd love to hear a comment. And then also just, I guess, a comment on the numbers. I don't think LLCs are the only concern. Data might be a little outdated, but a couple of years ago, I pulled out all the rental permits, and maybe I can talk more about this later, but a large number, I think 400 or so of our rental properties are owned by individuals, not LLCs, that have 5 or more properties. So it's not just an LLC problem. If we're going to think about this kind of regulation, individuals have to be part of the conversation too. So just a comment there. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Darcy, did you have any comment to Jesse's first question? All right. It sounds like you have 2 microphones on again. How about, yeah, maybe that works now, Darcy.
I don't think you can you hear me?
Yes, now it's working without a reverb.
Oh, good. Okay. Sorry, some of us are not too tech savvy. The first question was about fast tracking building, and I think are you referring, Jesse, to the final note that I stated at the end of the presentation?
I think it showed up earlier also. Just seems like there's a request to stop thinking about overlays intentionally meant for student housing. And so that surprises me because at least in our conversations, that's got to be part of the solution also. I agree with a lot of the points you're making, but I feel like it's got to go hand in hand.
Yeah, I think that the piece at the end of the proposal was about basically taking a pause around fire safety.
Sure.
And
no objection to that, of course.
Not fast tracking.
Okay.
In that.
All right.
I would have to consult with, I feel a little uncomfortable speaking for all of the residents. But I think that, yes, we're assuming that there is still needs to be student housing. We're hoping that the majority of new housing can be on campus or very near campus or on UMass land. But that we look, when we're planning new housing, that we prioritize non-student housing. Because that's what we need first and foremost. We need that to keep residents from moving away. So we're more interested in that than monetizing student rentals.
Sure, thanks.
All right. Angus, and then Fred, and then Bruce.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a couple of questions, and I don't know if this is something that Darcy, y'all can answer, or something that Nate might have insight on. I know when this was proposed to the town council, and in some of the comments we got, there's questions about legal enforcement of this. And so I guess one question that I have is, does this proposal, particularly the distancing requirements or limitation on rentals to principal arterial roads, are there issues with uniformity in zoning and applying zoning regulations differently to different parcels that are in the same zoning district?
Good question. I don't think we know the answer to that. We attempted to apply it to all principal arterial streets in all zoning districts. So we were hoping that that would handle the problem, but I think that's something that would have to be worked out.
Nate, has the town had any legal consultation about this? Do we have a sense of any kind of, because I guess I'm interested in this and talking more about this article, but if it's kind of a moot point because it's not legal to establish these kind of distancing requirements or limitations within a zone on different property owners, I don't want to spend too much time debating something that's legally not going to hold up in court and cause litigation for the town.
You're saying minimum distance requirements?
Right. So if one house on a block has student housing, right, and then the house next door wants to do a student home, if we had minimum distancing requirements, that wouldn't be possible, but those houses would both be located in the same zoning district. So I think there's worries that it's causing non-uniform enforcement mechanisms for properties that have technically the same zoning.
Right.
Angus, I'm gonna interject myself to just say, I don't think that the town has had a legal opinion about that yet. And Nate, that looks like you're nodding your head that that's the case. I think if we want to pursue that kind of thing further, we would certainly want to ask town council to weigh in on whether that's something that would fly in this state. It sounds like it's been in place in Pennsylvania for a while. Maybe the legal background in Pennsylvania allows it and it doesn't in Massachusetts, or maybe it'll work. So I think at the moment we should just say, is this something we want to think about more?
Mm-hmm.
And then if so, we can start to have a more serious conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, thanks, Doug. Yeah, I was gonna say that I think, everything from the actual definition to how it's permitted to the distance would need to be looked at. And so that's something we haven't done to know whether it's legal, right? I mean, I think, Massachusetts has its own enabling legislation and statutes and regulations. Every state is different. So what could be done in New York or Pennsylvania may or may not be able to be done in Massachusetts. And that would just take, some examination. And it could just be that it hasn't been done yet. Not that it's illegal. It's just that it's not a common practice. So there's a lot of, it would take a little bit more research if that were something we wanted to do.
All right, Angus, you're set? Okay, Fred.
Yeah, couple of things here. One is I'd like to just offer the observation that it is indeed possible to chew gum and walk at the same time. I certainly, and I think the planning board generally is entirely supportive of multi-generational housing. There is a mechanism now in place, the 40Y mechanism, that works in that direction. And I think it's pretty clear as a member of the Zoning and Housing Subcommittee, this is something that we're taking a very close look at, that does not require this particular amendment to go forward. And that would certainly create something that we would like. The other observation I wanted to make was about rent stabilization. I want to point out that that's another name for rent control, and it's illegal in Massachusetts. I think it was about 30 years ago, the people of the state in an initiative, the legislature didn't do this, the people of this state created by initiative and by vote of the people. It never went to the legislature. A provision in the general laws that makes it absolutely illegal for any municipality to do this. That is absolutely flagrantly illegal. It's a non-starter in Massachusetts. So that is not something that we should be spending time exploring.
All right, thank you, Fred. Bruce.
As I think, or certainly members of this board know, I spent, when I joined the board 3-4 years ago, I spent a year, not every day, but off and on time, looking at how towns like Amherst handled these problems being all of the ones that the petitioners are raising. I thought it's a pretty typical research approach to find out who's done what you're interested in understanding before and go and ask them what their answers were. And I thought that's a good technique, I'll do it. I took some time to identify 15 or so towns like Amherst. I have a tabulation of the criteria by which I picked from 150 or more, the 15 that fit best to be towns like Amherst. And then I made it my business to talk to planning directors. I got up to 8 conversations. And I did speak to the planning director of State College, Pennsylvania, Ed LeClaire. And they are the only one of the 8 or so that I spoke to who were solving their student housing problem. I mean, and because they were towns like Amherst, they had similar problems, similarly scaled towns with similarly scaled tertiary institutions embedded in them, and nothing much around them. The minimum distancing approach and the student housing, the student home definition at the time appealed to me. It was one of 3 broad solution concepts that towns like Amherst were pursuing. One of them was to successfully have their host institution build more housing. Charlottesville was at the time rather successful in that regard, but it was a standout. The other was minimum distancing, and State College, Pennsylvania was Villanova. I mean, the Newark, New Jersey, New Delaware had moved away from that, leaving State College as the only community that was really successfully practicing that. And I spoke at length with the Clare about how he was going about it, and they were pretty successful, and I think they're still doing it. It's a long-term thing. It took them years to build it up and to get it running. They were concerned because a federal court in Ohio had struck down this provision federally in Ohio, and he thought eventually it might go to the Supreme Court, in which case it wouldn't be possible, but it hadn't at that stage, and State College are continuing. It may be that this state has a provision independent of the federal statutes that would prevent this, and I certainly agree with that we should cross that bridge first. There's no point in pursuing this if it is not a possible, if it's legally constrained in a way that we can't do it. But it is an interesting approach. And so I should say the third approach was doing what we're trying to do in North Amherst. And most of the towns that I spoke to were pursuing some version of that. But State College has successfully pursued this concept, and I thought it would be interesting. So I spoke to, I think, probably Rob Moore at the time. As Claire had told me, and Rob was clear as well, this is a staff-intensive process. It really requires a lot. So you have to figure out how to price this, because it costs student homes. State College have at the time, and it's probably gone up now, $1,000 you have to register a student home. And they defended that very high price in court and proved that it was indeed a real cost to the town to develop a definition of student home. So there are considerably challenging bridges to cross on this route. It's also a market situation where you are essentially creating scarcity by limiting these houses. That's something I don't fully understand, but Leclerc was very clear with me about you have to recognize that and understand it and deal with it. So this is not an easy solution concept to enact. And I also question the petitioner's numbers because it seems to me that the actual number of student housing, if we are intending to solve our student housing problems solely by this means, we would possibly end up distributing student housing all over town, because the minimum distancing requirements would achieve that. It's hard to know for sure because many of these are already there and they would be put in place. But they would continue for 10 years, and then suddenly after 10 years they disappear. That also seems to me to be a very interesting explosive situation that would happen, and how that would be controlled. There is a very large amount of challenges associated with making something like this work, and so I'm curious as to whether we could do it, but I kind of gave up thinking that this was the best way of solving our problem for those various reasons 2 years ago or more. I'm not averse to continuing to see whether it could be figured out, but this is not something that hasn't been thought about, certainly by me, and I think in certain discussions with other members of this board.
All right, thank you, Bruce. Johanna, then Jesse, then Jara.
Thank you.
And then we will go to public comment.
Great. I appreciate Bruce invoking those conversations that we had in person at Town Hall where we explored those different scenarios. And I think coming out of that process, we decided, let's really focus on increasing supply and figuring out where we can do that. And then I guess I had one question for the petitioners, which, and I'm sorry if I missed this in your presentation, but can you talk it seems like this is really geared towards prospective future flipping of houses. Can you talk a little bit more about the potential impact on existing houses that are currently rented to students in town?
Which are you talking about?
I'm talking about the neighborhood that I live in. There are a bunch of residences for full-time residents, and then there are a bunch of places that are occupied by a bunch of students. And how would this proposal impact, like, how do you envision it impacting places that have already flipped to student houses?
The limitation to arterial streets, if you do not live on an arterial street,
Sure,
right,
Stanley Street.
Johanna?
No, I'm thinking about Willow and Tamarack, which are in the Misty Meadows development that are opposite us, and there are quite a few student houses in there.
Okay, so if they were not on a principal arterial street, then they would be able to continue as a student rental for X amount of time, whatever ends up being the, if I'm envisioning that they'll probably, if this were referred to the zoning subcommittee, that there may end up being some amendments to the numbers of in these provisions. But say if the number of years was 10, then the house could transition to be would stay a rental if that was what the owner wanted, but they would rent to non-students. It would not be a student house anymore because we would be trying to transition the student houses to the principal arterial streets. And then families could rent those houses.
Darcy, if you're on a street with 5 houses in a row and they're all student rentals, they are all going to have their 10-year allowance for students expire on the same day. How are you going to decide which of those 5 houses gets to keep renting to students because the other ones are within 700 feet?
If they're not on a principal arterial road, then they wouldn't be continuing to be student houses.
Well, you have an arterial requirement or allowance, and you have a 700 or 2,000 feet allowance. I thought those distance allowances applied throughout the zone.
They would apply until the period of time when the house would have to transition to a family.
So at the end of the 10 years, there would only be student houses available on the arterials, and there would be none available on feeder streets or small neighborhood streets.
Right, yes, and I heard you say in the very last planning board meeting that you thought that was a good idea. Or that you had thought about it anyway.
I have thought about things like that, yes. It's nice to find a point of confluence every now and then. Johanna, did you get an answer to your question?
I guess one more clarifying question then. On the feeder streets, there would be no student homes. And on the arterial streets, is that where then there would be the spaces? Or the
Yeah. Yes, there would be. And in 10 years, then that would be where the student houses would be located, and they would be subject to the minimum distance requirements. And like we said, we are completely open to friendly amendments. It might be that it makes more sense to you to put the minimum distance requirements only immediately adjacent to the university. Like I said, we're open to friendly amendments.
Okay. All right, Jara and then Fred.
Thank you. Well, first, I just want to say I absolutely sympathize with your desire to see stable, tight-knit communities that welcome families, diversity, people across the income spectrum, and absolutely sympathize with the desire to combat the growing trend of LLCs or bad faith landlords collecting single-family homes and converting them into rental properties and taking those home ownership opportunities away from first-time home buyers. I'm curious, I'm not so sure though that these proposals are the best mechanisms to achieve those goals. And so I'm curious, what other have you explored any other like options, like changing like nuisance ordinances or an alternative enforcement mechanism for noise in the evenings? Or I'm curious, like what led you do this set of proposals as opposed to some other ways to deal with undesirable student behavior?
I actually, I don't know if, I think Kitty would probably agree with me here that the motivation of the signatories of this petition really doesn't have anything to do with, or very little to do with student noise, student behavior, or anything, nothing anti-student really. It's only about maintaining our neighborhoods so that they don't tip. And because, for example, in my neighborhood, I have many more student houses than there were 10 years ago. Part of that is that the original owners that bought up in the neighborhood are moving out now. The fact that the LLCs can offer cash and they can offer much more than what a first-time home buyer would offer means they get the house. And I now have a huge student house next door. And what, my concern is that that house doesn't have a family with kids that are going to Crocker Farm School that can play with the kids across the street, and they don't have any investment in the neighborhood, and they don't talk to any of the neighbors, and they, that is more what we're looking at than noise, parties, whatever. People downtown are absolutely looking at that. And Kitty would like to add something.
Yeah, okay, hi.
Right.
The other part of this is that we really feel that we would like more businesses and commercial enterprises, especially in downtown and the village centers. And without a year-round population, we don't think that we're going to get there. As it is, the business community has really shrunk, as far as I can see, throughout town, because we don't have people to utilize them, right? And because the students are like, they're going home and doing their, when I've gone to the farmer's market, I say, do you vote here? And they say, no, I vote at home. Do you register your car here? No, I register my car at home. And I understand that because I used to be a student too. But we're looking for ways in which we can have something other than a bedroom community, something other than a monoculture in Amherst, because, and I mean, I think that you would agree that we want diversity in our town and not a monoculture. Right now, the median age in Amherst is something like 21.3 years of age, and in other places in the area, Northampton, Hadley, I think those are the ones I looked up most recently. It's 47 as the average age. I mean, we really have a very different setup in Amherst, and we're looking for ways, and that's why we're taking it to the planning board. We really want to motivate you people to think of ways that we can have a thriving business district and expand our tax base, not just on student housing, but in many other directions also. So
I hear you.
granular details, we haven't worked out a lot of these granular details. We're trying to get you all
Yeah.
as others to I don't want to say to do something because it's often worse to just do something without thinking it through. But I think there's really a necessity, and this is like feet to the fire. Let's figure something out, something that other towns have tried, and this seems like reasonable ones.
Right. And I want to commend you both and your co-signers for the initiative that you took and the courage that it takes to put yourselves out here and put out some ideas. Um, I really do admire that. And I hear that you are looking for solutions to reduce the competition for homeownership between those seeking to have student rentals and those who are seeking to set their roots down in Amherst. I absolutely understand that and sympathize with that. And I would love to try and figure out ways to make that happen. Again, I'm a little skeptical that these are the ways to do it, but I think that that goal is shared, and I think it's worth a discussion.
And I just want to add one thing. I don't understand the mechanism, I mean, the thinking that only having students, only building for students is more profitable than building for a mix of people. You all pointed out that the housing production plan does mention building for lots of different kinds of populations. I don't believe that we need to have only student housing and be a bedroom community in order to have housing for all people and to build up the tax base using housing for families, housing for workforce, all those other categories besides special design student housing.
All right.
Thank
All
you.
set. Jara? All right, Fred and then Jesse, we are coming up on 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I also want to commend you. There's a saying that I live by, and that is earn the right to complain. And you've earned the right to complain by taking the time to generate this petition. I have issues with it. You're quite correct in looking at the median ages of people in Amherst. And unfortunately, this is a consequence of having the flagship state university entirely within the boundaries of the town of Amherst, basically. A little bit of it is in Hadley, not much. And there are consequences to that. And these are market consequences. And this is a very complicated and difficult thing to take into account. As I said, the rent stabilization, that is a non-starter. That is simply unlawful. The other, I think there is a significant issue here that we need to encourage, and the ZBA is systematically encouraging this by favoring owner occupancy. Owner occupancy has it has behavioral objectives, but it's more than that, because a multifamily building that is owner occupied, the owner can be someone of considerably lower means than someone who is simply buying a single family house, because they have rental income that offsets part of the mortgage. And I say this as someone who has lived in an owner occupied multifamily house now 53 years in Amherst, and which is not on an arterial. The number of complaints regarding behavior of tenants from this address in the mechanisms that the town has available to it. Total in that 53 years, exactly 0. But we have nevertheless seen issues that you've raised as the number of owner-occupied dwellings have gone down. There's still a lot of them. There was a special permit proceeding in a budding parcel, and the town building department actually did up a map that they put it on screen of the owner-occupied buildings that were in the area of this particular one, which, as I said, it's an abutting property to mine. And it was really surprising that there were a lot of multifamily dwellings that are owner-occupied around it. And that's in terms of behavior, that is the best way to approach this. But we certainly are looking at these issues very actively in the housing subcommittee, and we'll continue to do so.
All right, thank you, Fred. I'll just add that the whole board has been looking at a number of those issues as well. Jesse, and then we'll go to public comment. I see one hand already up. Think about whether you want to make a public comment for this proposal this evening. I think it's likely we'll be continuing this hearing. Go ahead, Jesse.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thanks for that segue, both Fred and Doug. Really just a comment that I very much appreciate you all bringing the conversation. I do need to recognize that the conversation can't just be here. In addition to the monumental effort that Bruce spent a couple years ago to gather all the data on most of these ideas that you've included, the planning board and the subcommittee has spent tons of effort over the last couple of years that I've been involved trying to bring some of these things forward, and they don't go anywhere. So I think my point is the conversation can't be just with the planning board. I appreciate you tasking us to do something. I agree, but the conversation has to happen all around town, not just here, in order for it to take the next step. So, thanks.
All right, Jesse. All right, why don't we go to public comment? I see two hands. I don't remember, Pam or Nate, if one of you could bring over Josh Lewis.
Good.
Yeah, I'll
Hello?
take care of that, Doug.
Okay, hello again, Josh.
Hello again.
Tell us what town you live in now.
Oh, I live in Newton.
Newton,
So,
okay.
yes, I'm very familiar with a lot of these different zoning fights and all that. So
Yeah, okay,
let me be direct.
I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. Let me be direct. So Article 19 is intentionally discriminatory against students. It is exclusionary suburban politics dressed up as neighborhood protection. The proposal to create a 700 to 2,000 foot buffer zone between student homes, it bans is essentially redlining and segregation by not allowing, students near residential homes just because, you think they're desirable. And so that's just it's gonna just like move, it's probably gonna move students farther away from campus and make it so that they can't, it's gonna create a really weird market effect. And I don't know. And sorry, yeah, I also want to mention about how I think using the Olympia fire to justify this is kind of disturbing. 230 students lost their homes. And yeah, I actually used to hang out there. I had a friend that lived there. It was quite nice. And I think we probably need to build more now since it's gone. And sorry, I'm blanking. I think, the real solution would be to build more apartments near campus, near bus lines and near downtown, so students don't actually have to go into these single family neighborhoods, because the reason why they continue to encroach on these single family neighborhoods is just there's not enough near campus, and obviously, you know, the school doesn't build enough. I think that the school does need to like not let in as many people because I think they're kind of greedy as well. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think that it is discriminatory and it would actually make things worse. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Nate, if you could bring over Jennifer Taub.
Can you hear me?
Yes, hello, Jennifer.
Hi. So I'm Jennifer Taub, a resident of, I live on Lincoln Avenue. I am mostly speaking in my capacity as a resident, but at the end, I will tell you when I'm making a comment with my council hat on. So I did want to, in terms of, you know, rent control and rent stabilization, I did want to acknowledge that yes, of course, right now it is not legal in Massachusetts, that there is discussion that the legislature may, you know, take that up. But for now, that is at the current time, not an option in Amherst or anywhere in the state. So what a minimal distance requirements would accomplish, or limiting student houses to arterial streets, does mean that property owners who want to rent their dwellings, if not located on an arterial road, could do so, but they would, you know, have to rent to non-student households. And since most non-student households in Amherst cannot afford dwellings that are priced at $1,000 or more per bedroom, then those dwellings could still be rented, but they would have to be priced in a range that families and members of our workforce and retirees and other non-student households could afford. And I can't really see another way that we can incentivize rental housing that is not priced at the highest point the market can bear, and that is renting to students who share the rent. It's still very expensive for students, but they, unlike a family, you know, have they split expenses. You know, if you're a single parent with 3 kids, you're paying for all the bedrooms. Your kids are not, you know, sharing it with you. So putting some limitations on where student houses can be would create some pressure for those houses and, you know, multifamily dwellings that can't be rented to students to be priced again at a point that non-student households couldn't afford. And I guess with my
Jennifer,
council hat on, I just want to say that I do agree with that. I think it was Jera may have raised it earlier, that are there conversations happening with the university? I would love for the council and the university to be able to have a conversation together. And perhaps, Mr. Marshall, in your capacity with the planning board or in your role, you know, between 9 to 5 could help to facilitate those conversations. Thank you.
all right, thank you, Jennifer. All right, I don't see any more hands from the public. I will just remark that it is 7 minutes after 9. Board members, how are you feeling about this? Is this something we want to continue the conversation? And I'll stop there with my sentence. Angus and then Bruce.
Yeah, I guess I have a question to the board as well. It was helpful to hear Bruce talk about how the board, before I arrived, was considering different options for trying to essentially, you know, house students in different places that aren't in, you know, single family neighborhoods. I guess I'm just wondering, it sounds like the board and the housing subcommittee thought about that as an option and decided to pursue other options. And so I worry now we are pursuing other options. I guess I worry about going back to that discussion if the planning board and the housing subcommittee have already discussed that. So I guess I'm wanting to hear from members who were here at the time a little bit more about that.
I mean, maybe I'll say just a couple of things and then Bruce and Jesse, you can add on. You know, I feel like it was just last summer that the housing subcommittee came with a proposal for a student house proposal that, you know, I mean, it was a night, there were 5 of us at the board. I was the only one that voted against it. The 4 members of the housing subcommittee voted in favor of it. It passed. It went to the town council and they elected not to act on it. So Jesse, when we get to you, you can tell me if I just mischaracterized it. I'm working from memory here. So that was a conversation about student homes. And, you know, I know, Darcy, wasn't it you that brought the sort of duplex proposal to everyone? Maybe it wasn't you. But we had it, Bruce, you're saying no, it wasn't.
It
but
was Pat DeAngelis and
it was Pat
Mandy,
DeAngelis, right? Okay, so Pat DeAngelis had that proposal with council that was referred to us that was saying, let's allow duplexes everywhere that we now allow single-family homes. And that was actually the conversation where I thought, gee, I'd be willing to do that along arterials, but I wasn't sure I'd be willing to do it everywhere. So those are just a couple of the conversation points that come to my mind about some of the things that have been involved here. I'll now go to Bruce and then Jesse.
Well, if I were to continue discussing this, the first thing I would do would be to clarify what's actually being asked for. For example, eliminate the consideration of rent stabilization clearly, and then try and work out. I'm looking at page 1, not of the presentation, but of the memorandum, and this is all very confusing. And I'm not going to try and plow through it now. It's just not clear. And
Right.
It needs to be reformulated. It needs to be written in a way that's basically says what the petitioners are trying to say in distributed through the rest of the document. But I don't think anyone should put effort into that until we find out whether this is possible, whether the state, whether the Commonwealth, whether the MGL, Mass General Laws, has some prescription over this. So I would probably move for something. I'd be inclined to move continuation to a date by which time town council has rendered an opinion as to whether this is something that is we are.
You mean
we are
the
spending
distance
time.
requirements?
Yes, if we
Okay.
can't do that, I mean, we proposed to the council a definition of student homes because we thought, goodness, we're a university town, so many people in town are students. We should at least have a definition of what a student home is if we want to move forward with anything or all sorts of things. So it wasn't specifically geared towards minimum distancing, but we did take the State College definition. So, you know, we weren't ignorant of the possibility of one course of utilization of a student home definition. But there's really no point in putting effort into this if it can be clearly determined that we are not able to do it in the Commonwealth. So we should first of all find out whether we can, and if we can, then I think we should continue the discussion just in case we miss something the first time around.
All
But
right,
we've talked about this.
All right.
This is not new to us.
All right. Thank you, Bruce. Jesse.
Thanks. Yes, Doug, your recollection is my recollection as well. Just a couple more comments about that. In addition to what Bruce said, yes, we spent a lot of time trying to get the right definition to propose. And the whole point of that was so that we could begin to think about some of these other ideas that you all, including the ones you all have brought. And that really was my comment about the conversation has to be elsewhere also. We can put forward anything we want. if there aren't receptive ears, the next step, it's not going to matter. And so I think that's the hesitation to take up some of this again. Personally, I'm up for it. I think we need to. I think we need to keep beating this drum. I'm definitely open to considering these things again. I think what's definitely slightly new here is the arterial idea, although with the subcommittee, we had a couple not so distant ideas recently also. So I think that is definitely of interest to myself and probably others. On the what's legal and what's not legal, my general view is it's with these kinds of things, it's maybe not possible until it is. And again, this is another place where I've been a little frustrated by some of our recent thoughts that never went anywhere. Just one example, there's clear around the ADU bylaws. There are other places in Massachusetts that have exceptions for various reasons. I argued with some others that I thought we should try and make that an exception as well, but we didn't convince enough people that we should move forward in that direction. So I'm personally not opposed to considering things, at least trying to consider things that may be legally murky at the moment. Long story short, I think we should consider some of these ideas, at least with discussions with staff, if not the subcommittee.
All right. Well, I will say one thing that occurs to me that would get around the possible legal prohibition on the distancing. Now that I understand that Darcy and Kitty's intent is that there really are only student rentals along arterials. We could set zoning, we could have uniform zoning that's just one property deep along arterials. And, regulate the kinds of buildings you could have in that zone. And now, let's suppose that you did that and you did allow the buildings to be big enough to actually meet the demand. That would mean some of those old houses along Route, South Maple Street or, South Pleasant Street, might be torn down. And then instead of driving along and seeing old New England, you would see new student housing. Well, my neighborhood wouldn't have any kids in it, but I'd be in sort of schizophrenia when I drove to work every morning. I left New England and drove through campus to get to campus or something. So, there's different ways that it can play out. So anyway, I'll stop there. Nate, I think it sounds like there's some stuff we'd like to investigate, and would you be willing to work with us on it?
Yeah, I was going to just say to Angus that, the 2015 Comprehensive Housing Market Study, RKG Associates completed that, and they looked at, other communities in the US, mostly on, like Mid-Atlantic, and they referenced having more stringent requirements in neighborhoods, but also as a, corollary measure, allowing student housing and density in other parts of town, right? So it's not like one or the other, they both have to work in concert. And so I think when, some of the ideas was, okay, what's allowed in Massachusetts and how could we have, say, restrictive zoning, if you want to call it that, and then be flexible in other areas. And we've never quite had both achieved at the same time. And so when a proposal was made to change how 1 and 2 families and the addition of a triplex was proposed a few years ago, the planning board discussed it quite a bit and said, maybe this isn't the right approach. Let's step back a bit and say, how can we achieve, relief of market pressures differently than trying to go at it by, a unit type and a zoning district type. And so that's why we didn't approach some of these strategies at that time, because, we were trying to step back and say, what are some other ideas to look at it? So I think, we can explore this. I think part of me is like, okay, if we do this, then we still should really push for more, denser housing around the university campus and other parts of town. If I look at this amendment right now, in the end, we're saying would only allow student rentals of single-family homes and two-family homes on 11 streets in town. That doesn't make much sense to me. we say we want we'll allow student rentals on Bay Road, but not someplace closer to campus. And so again, I think there's ideas here that we could work on. I don't know if this is ready as a zoning amendment. So typically a zoning amendment would be the form that you could then make tweaks to language to adopt it. To me, these are ideas that can be discussed to maybe become a zoning amendment, but this isn't a zoning amendment yet. And so we can continue the conversation, but I don't think this is a zoning amendment that, I want to spend time on for next 7 meetings to try to get to bringing it back to council. I think this is something that is part of a bigger discussion the board's been having for 2 years. And I think we still need, like Jesse said, we need to keep having these conversations. And we have to decide if we like the student home definition. I think it's worth looking into. Is it legal? Then the question is, would it be passed by town council, and what do we do with it? And that was always the question when we were looking at it. And so, staff has talked about that. Is there a way to try to, how do you discern, what's an undergraduate student versus another student? What's this or that? And it's really difficult. Other states can do it. Other communities maybe can do it. I agree with Jesse. It's maybe we do it until we get a lawsuit, right? That's kind of the leap we might have to take, because no one's going to come out and say yes or no sometimes, because it might not be really clear legally. And Massachusetts is a case law state. The state law might not really say it clearly. There's not case law to define it. And so, are we going to be, willing to be one of the first communities that has a student home definition and has regulations that for it? Maybe. But I think that's something we put it on our priority list, and we continue to talk about it, and maybe it becomes, part of the, priorities we talk about sooner than later, right? We have quite a few the Housing and Zoning Subcommittee are looking at, that staff want to look at. And so, I think this is something that we add to the list. Maybe there's a few ideas we add to the list because of this conversation. But maybe we still continue this hearing to another meeting, but knowing that, if we really want to work on it, it's going to be more than, to me, more than like a few weeks. It's a pretty big conversation.
All right. Thank you, Nate. Angus.
Yeah, I'll just keep it brief. I think in the Housing and Zoning Subcommittee, we're clearly trying to think through strategies to help with this problem. I guess I'm concerned. What Nate just described is a lot of administrative time. Setting up a program like this is also going to require an enormous amount of administrative effort. And then on top of that, we at least based on what Bruce was describing, it sounds like State College is waiting for a lawsuit. And it sounds like we'd be waiting for a lawsuit as well. And so I guess I'm just a little bit concerned about putting a lot of emphasis into this particular zoning amendment, as opposed to doing a version of what Nate is suggesting, which is incorporating more of these discussions into the Housing and Zoning Subcommittee, and inviting the petitioners and other commenters to talk more with us about how we can incorporate this into our multi-pronged strategy, as opposed to a single strategy that's one article to the zoning bylaw, when other things are working more holistically.
All right. I don't see any more board hands raised. There was a hand raised in the public. Are there any members of the public? Josh Lewis, let's bring Josh back over. Josh, if you can keep it under 2 minutes, that would be great.
Yes. I believe that there was potentially some misinformation about the State College, Pennsylvania. I just pulling up some notes here. Yeah, apparently I haven't done a deep dive on this, but minimum distance student home laws have been challenged and struck down in federal court in similar cases. And basically what the State College did is they built thousands of new beds in tall, high density student housing developments, and that actually reduced pressure in single family neighborhoods, which lines up with my line of argumentations. And it seems like they did do the student home restrictions that they did push demand into new areas, which worsened scarcity elsewhere. And it doesn't seem like their what they did was actually that effective. So I would encourage you guys to look closer into that,
right.
into really what's going on there before, basing your policy off of what they're doing.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Don't see any other hands from the public, no hands from the board. All right, I'm gonna throw out a motion to continue this hearing to December 17th at 6:35. Period. Anybody want to second that? No. Okay. Jesse.
I will second that motion.
All right.
Doug, was Article 18 continued to 6:35? Should we say?
Article 18 was defeated.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Yep.
Bruce?
I just want to know to what end.
Well, it seemed like at least some people on the board were willing to entertain reconsideration of some of the ideas in their proposal, many of which we've talked about before. It seemed like the housing subcommittee might be willing to have some conversation with the petitioners. And I thought, rather than just shut it off this evening, that it would be worth at least giving them the courtesy of a continuation. Now,
Well, I could second that. I mean,
I don't, I think
well, I guess it doesn't
I
need-
agree with Nate. It's really not ready as a actual zoning bylaw proposal. So, how we want to proceed is, I'm open to it, but
well, the invitation for the petitioners and supporters to join and engage in a process would seem to be because this. I mean, I know it's hard to put all the effort into this and so forth, and the petitioners have, and as we've saying, we understand that, but good Lord, we do the same. We do it every week.
Right.
Hours. And this feels somewhat like, you're having a deep conversation with somebody over the dinner table. You're 45 minutes in and the phone rings. And you answer the phone and your conversation is interrupted by someone who's just broken in with whatever the hell they want to talk about, which may or may not be relevant to the conversation it's been having, but it feels it's got that about it. It would be much better if instead of calling, they knocked on the door and joined the conversation at the table. That would be a preferred outcome for me. But I'm not opposed. I won't vote against continuation. I just want to know why we're doing it, because we've got business here. We've got lots of things we're thinking about, and we've got an order, an agenda, and so forth. And it doesn't sit extremely well with me that suddenly the agenda is bumped out by somebody who parachutes in. Am I being too elitist here? Probably. I usually am. I'm sorry about that.
Well, I invite you to oppose the motion. I'm not hell-bent on continuing, but I thought that was where we should start. And I got a pretty reasonably quick second. So Angus and then Jesse. We do have a motion on the table.
So speaking to the motion, I don't think that's a good idea. I think that this zoning amendment as proposed needs a lot more work. But more importantly, I don't think that a zoning amendment is the way to go, especially when the planning board has discussed and proposed changes, which the town council has not acted on, and that this has been going on for a couple of years. I think there are other ways we can try and tackle this in the Housing and Zoning Subcommittee, and I think that's the place to be talking not about a zoning bylaw necessarily, but about other ways that we can achieve these goals. And so I just don't think that more talking as a whole planning board on this subject. If this was a new subject, I'd agree. But since it's something that the planning board has spent a lot of time on, I just don't think it's a good use of our time as a collective.
All right, thank you. Jesse.
Yeah, I think I've been convinced similarly, but what I would also offer is that I do think there are some new thoughts here that have not come up, at least in my time with the planning board. And I do think they're worth consideration, and I do think they can be incorporated into certainly the subcommittee conversations at some point. But I kind of agree, in its current form, it's not something I think any of us would vote on to pass to the town council for consideration. So
Jesse,
continuation.
since I made the motion and you seconded, should we withdraw the motion?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so we need another motion, and I'm not going to jump this time.
What was I saying?
Anybody want to make another motion? I suppose we don't have to make a recommendation at all. We could just close the hearing. Nate, is that true? Do you agree with that?
Yes, so, the Mass General Law requires that in order for a zoning amendment to be adopted or, voted on, it has to follow these processes. And, what isn't clear and what, the council wasn't clear when the council referred it is, what if there's no action and it just, just doesn't, never moves forward. And, that could happen, right? So that the planning board takes no action, then the council then has to wait longer. Right, so if the planning board doesn't make a recommendation but closes the hearing, the council has a prescribed amount of time where then it could pick it up again or it could not. It just lengthens the council then has to wait so many days after the hearing whether or not the planning board has submitted a report. So if you close the hearing tonight, a few weeks pass, the council can take action whether or not the planning board has made a recommendation.
All right, thank you for that. So I see 4 hands, starting with Johanna.
I was going to move to not recommend Article 19 to the town council and to close the public hearing.
So that is to take no action versus recommending against.
No, I was going to say recommend against this
Okay.
draft.
All right.
I just, yeah, in the spirit of giving clarity to the town council on the upshot of our conversation tonight.
All right.
Second.
All right. So Angus, did you want to say anything else before we move? Well, all of the hands on the board just disappeared. So, all right. I see 1 hand from the public, which just dropped. Hetty Startup, can we bring her over?
Hetty, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello, Hetty.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was one of the people who signed on to these proposals, and I think in the back of my mind, it was really to try and just have this kind of conversation that we've been having tonight. And I'm fairly new to Amherst, unlike Bruce. So I hear his frustration. I also know that overlaying this is the overlay proposal, and I just wish that there was a little bit more caution in how we arrive at these decisions. I speak not from a position of having a lot of involvement with the town in its administration, but I have been on the historical commission, and I can think of a number of occasions when the fact that there isn't a kind of consensus around housing, that the production plan is not completed, that the design standards, what's the name of the company? Nate, help me. Anyway, these things are sort of rolling around, and the moratorium it's a very loaded word, but it does provide a kind of breathing space. And I don't want to bring up Olympia Place because it's a terrible tragedy, but because that kind of thing should give us more pause when we consider issues of, village centers or downtown, so that we just give ourselves some breathing space. So that's all I really want to say. So I'd like to hold off. I hope you I hope you keep talking about this rather than just throwing things out. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Hetty. Jara.
I was just gonna ask, can we add on to this motion, re-examine our previously submitted student house definition or something like that? Like in lieu of moving forward with this article, do the other thing that
We
we
can
already.
always go back to things we've talked about before. Yeah, we can.
Well, I guess I don't need to complicate the motion.
I
but
mean,
that-
I don't think it needs to complicate the motion, but you can certainly ask to have something on the agenda for a meeting.
Okay.
And we can pull out the minutes from whatever meetings, that was, or the proposal that was sent to the town council. Yeah. All right, I don't see any hands at all. Let's see, I'm trying to remember. Johanna, you had made the motion to not recommend, to recommend against to town council for this bylaw proposal and to close the hearing. Jesse?
Sorry, I have a question about the motion. If we close the hearing but don't send a recommendation, council then has to address it, or they can choose to address it?
Nate?
Right, so if the, planning board recommends it, then the council can take it up quickly. If the planning board doesn't take an action, they have to wait longer before they could pick it up again. So, it's like 21 days after the close of the hearing, the council could do something. If there's no action, they have to wait longer. So they can always pick it up at some point. It's just, the time frame is lengthened.
And if we vote to not recommend,
That would be a communication to council, and
they still could.
it could be, yeah, they could still adopt it or whatever.
Just wanted to
Right,
understand.
right. Yep.
Okay. All right, I see another hand from Janet Keller. Janet, give us your 30-second elevator speech. Janet? Oh dear.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. I just want to say that I've been haunted by the Olympia Place fire by something that is related to zoning, which is that tall buildings should not be have flammable materials like wood on them. So perhaps that's simplistic, but I think it's an example of what we do, what decisions we make have consequences. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Janet. Okay, so again, we have a motion to recommend against adoption to town council and close the hearing. I'm going to go ahead with the vote now, and I'm just going to go with the usual order, Bruce.
I'm an aye.
So a yes vote is against adoption, just to be clear to everybody. Bruce, go, thank you. Fred?
Aye.
Angus?
Aye.
Jesse?
Nay.
Johanna?
Aye.
Jara?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. The motion passes 6 in favor, 1 opposed. Thank you all. Thank you, Darcy and Kitty. I hope you're not discouraged by the actions we've taken this evening. I think you've prompted a conversation that frankly the board has been having, but I think we got a little more attendance this evening than usual, a wider group of people present, and we've brought up some topics that the board has talked about before, but some of the recent newer members were not aware of. So I think it has been a productive evening. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're not discouraged.
Okay.
We'll keep on.
You're not going anywhere either.
That's right.
Come to the subcommittee.
Yeah, watch for the next subcommittee meeting.
Okay.
All right, the time is 9:39. Nate, why don't, actually, it looks like I've got another hearing I need to introduce. All right, in accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, this public hearing has been duly advertised and notice thereof has been posted and is being held for the purpose of providing the opportunity for interested citizens to be heard regarding proposed zoning map change, Main Street BN District, to consider amending the Town of Amherst official zoning map to rezone 3 parcels on Main Street, known as 14B-29, 14B30, and 14B31, from the General Residence District, RG, to the Neighborhood Business District, BN. All right, any board member disclosures? No. Applicant presentation. Is that you, Nate, or do we have somebody else?
Yeah, Rob Moore is here. We can bring him over.
Oh, okay. Rob, thanks for staying with us to this point. Hello, Rob.
Good evening. Thanks, everyone. Pam or Nate, whoever can help me bring up the presentation, please. I have a quick presentation to go through.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, thanks, Pam. If you can go right to the next slide, we'll get started right away. So this is the proposal to expand a portion of the B and the neighborhood business district on Main Street. This is a very simple proposal because it only changes the map. There's no language change to the bylaw at all. And it affects 3 parcels that are currently in the general residence district. And those are known as numbers 229, 257, and 285 Main Street that I'll talk about in a minute. There is a current single parcel in BN district on the corner of Dickinson and Main, currently standalone parcel 319 to 321. That'll be the area that we're looking to expand from. All parcels are located in the local historic district as well, just for note. Next slide, please. So this is just why we are doing this. There's a couple of reasons that support our overall goals, but I think the one in the middle is the one that we really want to talk about when we get to that parcel is how this proposal can affect the future of a business that is impacted by the current zoning in the district. Next slide, please. So we've done a few things here. We've been talking about this proposal for pretty much since the early summertime. I did give an overview to the planning board at that time. I know not everyone here tonight was there for that meeting to hear the initial overview and idea to move ahead with this proposal. There's been a lot of discussions with property owners, both those that are affected by the property and the ones surrounding the properties where the change is being proposed. This is a amendment proposal that was brought to the council by the town manager. So developed by staff, but presented to the council by the manager and ultimately referred here. Next slide, please. So again, just a reminder, we're talking about just two zoning districts, the general residence, with its purpose to provide medium and higher density near the town center, between the university and town center, and services and employment and et cetera. Next slide, please. The proposed district, neighborhood business, similarly has moderate density standards, but also incorporates some non-residential opportunities and can provide for a good transition between the more dense areas and the residential neighborhoods, which we can see on the map that this is what we're talking about here in this proposal. Next slide, please. So here's an image of our current map. Pam, if you're able to, if you can point out Dickinson Street in Maine, the intersection that is right at the one down below, yep, Main Street. And yep, Main Street is right there. Dickinson is the first parcel right there. That is in white, is the BN district. And we are looking to expand to the 3 parcels to the left on the map that Pam is pointing at. And if we can go right ahead to the next slide, Pam. Yeah. Those parcels are shown there outlined in blue. So from the left, all the way to the left, 229, the larger parcel in the middle, 257, and the small one next to the current piece of BN, 285. Next slide, please. So starting with 229, we've got a 20,000 square foot parcel. It is currently a pre-existing non-conforming use of an owner-occupied duplex. And this is a parcel that with the change could potentially see some potential development, modest development, but certainly could see some potential development here. Now, none of these properties are proposing any type of physical change to the properties, but I do want to point out that with the lot area of 20,000 square feet and only 2 units on that property, there's certainly possibilities, whether it be a couple more units or it could be maybe a larger home occupation type of a use that's non-residential component could also be considered for that parcel. Next slide, please, Pam. 257, this is the Amherst Inn. So this is a fairly large parcel for the area, 35,000 square feet. And it exists with a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals issued in 1997 to allow for an accessory use bed and breakfast. Now, our accessory use provisions have a few limitations. The property needs to be owner occupied. And most importantly, I think to the limitations on this use is that there cannot be more than 4 to 6 guests. This certainly was fine 30 years ago. The owners applied for a permit, took on an ambitious restoration of the historic home, and ultimately what they have today are 8 very beautiful guest rooms that have been refinished in the building. However, they have this limit on the number of guests. That's number of people, that's not number of rooms. So I think you can see quickly how that can be very limiting to the operation of a bed and breakfast. The potential change would allow for a change of use. So if we were to put these parcels into the neighborhood business district, the owner of the inn could seek to change from an accessory use into a primary use inn or bed and breakfast, and ultimately not have the limit of guests be 4 to 6. There's also further complications with the property in its current form related to fire and building codes, and that's kind of what generated this discussion and motivated staff to look at this option and significant improvements that will be needed for this building, but they really only make sense if the use is able to operate with the full use of the 8 rooms that the current building has. Next slide, please.
Rob, are you saying that, for instance, maybe they need to install sprinklers, but that expense would be unsupported if they didn't have bigger occupancy?
Exactly. So this came to my attention following a routine inspection from the fire department. And the fire department, when they were there, noted that there's Mass General Law when there's a lodging or boarding facility that offers rooms to more than 5 individuals. No, not 5 rooms, 5 people, 5 guests. Could be 2 in a room. That counts as 2. And they brought to my attention that this property did not have the required systems to operate in that way. And that would be the big ones are sprinkler and fire alarm. That would need to be upgrades to this building. And that, of course, was conveyed to the owners. They are very much interested in making the improvements. They are very much hoping to be able to fully use the property, but they cannot make that kind of investment if they're really limited to four guests, essentially, because they count as one. If a owner has to live there as an accessory use, then they can have 4, that one owner living there could have 4 guests, and that would be the maximum use at one time in that property under the current laws. That's what we're telling them. So I think you can see how difficult that is for what they're trying to do there with that property and what they have done to restore it into its condition. There could be other things. We haven't fully examined it. They have engaged an architect that's looking at the property, but because of the dollar value and other things that might be required, we could see things like accessibility improvements. But again, anything that's a proposal to the exterior of the building would both be subject to site plan review if it didn't qualify for administrative approval, and review through the local historic district commission. Next slide, Pam. The last parcel in the proposal is 285 Main Street. This is another pre-existing non-conforming use, and it's apartment building with 6 units. It's a smaller parcel. It's extremely built out for coverage, building and lot coverage. And it a few years ago was entirely remodeled following a fire, bringing it up to current standards, life safety systems, structural improvements, new parking lot. So significant amount of work that it really makes it unlikely that anything would ever change with this property, I guess, is the point that I'm trying to make. There's no opportunity to expand anywhere, and it's in very good condition following the recent renovation. So last slide, this is what the map would look like should this proposal move forward and get adopted. Again, taking that one BN parcel, that one spot we have on the corner of Dickinson and Main, and stretching it over the next 3 parcels, intentionally leaving the church property out for further discussion someday. I think when we talk downtown someday, that parcel will be part of that discussion, and right now I think it's best to just leave it there until we get to that level of discussion. Thank you.
All right. Board members, questions? I guess I'll start with one until somebody else raises a hand. You said that the owners of the center parcel, the inn, who have the greater capacity than they're allowed to utilize or rent, did they realize, did they just do that whole building renovation and create 8 great bedrooms because they love the building, or were they sort of counting on getting that limitation changed?
I don't know if I've had that exact discussion. I mean, this goes back to, again, 1997. And I know from speaking with the current owners, who one of them is the original owner from 1997 who was granted the permit. It was a large undertaking, and one room at a time. And from my understanding is that the accessory use permit probably worked well for many years as they brought one room available, then a second room available. And here we are all these years later, and it came to their attention that there is this limitation in the zoning bylaw. And I think what was probably more of a surprise to anybody is that there isn't actually a path to resolve it. So usually we have something to offer a business owner or a property owner on how to get to accomplish what they are hoping for. And the bylaw in the RG district just doesn't offer anything. We cannot expand the 4 to 6 under the accessory use, and a primary use is simply a no in the district.
Okay. Contract zoning, is that an option?
Very much discouraged. So we try not to do that. We have a couple in town. They don't work well, and generally is not the path we want to take. And this, although I would say that this, the situation for this property owner motivated this discussion, moved it up on the priority list for staff to look at. This is exactly what we've been talking about for this area. We're taking just a little piece of it, but the overall thought for transitioning out of the BG district to the BN to the BVC down to the RG district is exactly what we would want to do if we were approaching this in a bigger scope. So we've had those discussions in recent years on these parcels in particular, and just thought we were ready to move this forward, at this time in this very small piece.
Okay. All right, Fred, and then Jesse.
Yeah. I have some sympathy to the argument about the transition between zoning districts. On the other hand, this is across the street from the Dickinson House, which is an incredibly important resource for the town. And I'm wondering, do we have any comments from Amherst College on their take on this? Because I understand the logic for this, but I also am very, very cautious about moving forward with this, given the very possible impact that it would have on the Dickinson property. And I would want to hear from Amherst College on this.
Rob,
So we
communication?
don't have anything from Amherst College, but we do have in your packet, there is a letter of support from a member of the Dickinson Museum. We did send out notices to all abutting property owners. We're not required to do that, but we made it a point to make sure that all parcels within 300 feet of the affected parcels were noticed of these hearings. There may be some in the audience that will speak one way or the other. But I think we see this and believe this is in support of and not in any way detrimental to the Dickinson Museum.
All right, Jesse?
Great, thanks. Thanks, Rob, for the presentation. I don't think I'm opposed to this at all. I guess I'm wanted you to expand a little on what you said, that you would imagine this going wider in this area, but you didn't feel ready for that. So I guess why not, given the conversations the last 3 hours and some of the other bigger conversations? So why not just do more now?
Yeah, I'm not sure the more would be BN. So what we want to do is, and I know it's on your list with the subcommittee and as a planning board priority list to start looking at the downtown, both BG and BL. And I think having those design standards in place really will move us into those discussions, and perhaps the BG district boundaries would be changed, or part of that discussion. And we just weren't ready without having the design standards finalized. We weren't ready to creep that direction any further at this time. I didn't think it was necessary. I didn't think it was, appropriate until we have that study completed and those recommendations.
Okay. And last comment maybe is if you and staff have already thought this through, like a bigger plan, I think we'd love to see that even if it's not ready. Like what kind of boundaries are you thinking about would change?
Sure. We have all kinds of ideas for both BL and BG that have been around for quite a while. So we certainly are eager for that discussion when it's up on the list for your discussions at those subcommittee meetings.
Great, thanks.
Angus.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that Amherst College, I just wanted to disclose that Amherst College is my employer. I don't think that this will have any kind of an impact on the Emily Dickinson Museum property, which is owned by the trustees, but I'll be abstaining from the vote. Thank you.
And Jara.
Thank you. Fred, this is me asking genuinely, what concerns would you have for how this could impact the Dickinson property? When I saw these, like I thought, oh, these will, more people will be staying at the inn at the inn who can visit, and there might be other businesses, or what are you concerned about how this might impact the Dickinson property?
Well, this is the property that is existing on the corner of Dickinson Street and Main Street. That is kind of famous. I remember in my first 6 years on the planning board, this is back in the 1990s, discussions about this, and that was if I recall the history, that was a non-conforming use, and it could continue by special permit, and it was kind of famous as an example of, it was commercial before we had zoning, and so it's existing non-conforming, and the ZBA kept very careful track of it because of the sensitivity to the Dickinson house across the street, and this has had a lot of visibility at the planning board level when I was on the board previously. And this proposal now would extend that to 3 other parcels. And I think we need to have our eyes open here that this, by changing the underlying zoning here to a business zoning, we ultimately could change the character of what is opposite the Dickinson property. And I'm still, partly because I remember the discussions from 25 years ago, I'm having a little bit of trouble getting my head around this.
That's really helpful. I was asking, if I was curious if it was parking or if it was, a business moving in that doesn't complement, or if that would somehow create speculation of the Dickinson property, which I assumed is not an option. But I certainly appreciate the understand the concern over changing the culture. So thank you.
Yeah, see, the one on the corner is clearly a commercial use, and it kind of doesn't belong opposite Dickinson House, but it was a commercial use before Amherst had zoning. And so it can continue by special permit. But the other three, this opens the door. And I'm reluctant to open that door. I understand the hardship with the sprinkler requirements and so forth. Yeah, I understand that there's a hardship here, but I think that's better regulated through special permits than changing the underlying zoning.
Rob, I see your hand. Do you want to respond to that, or?
I just want to clarify one thing about the property that Mr. Hartwell's referring to on the corner of Dickinson and Main, 319 to 321. That zoning district did change, in the last 10, 12, 15 years. I don't remember the exact date, but those uses in there are not regulated by special permit. They are regulated by site plan review and often change under administrative approval, which are all recent changes that we've made in our zoning bylaw to make it more flexible for those properties or that property to have business activity, survive there.
Okay. Bruce.
I was on the board when Fred was on the board 25 years ago as well. I don't share his concerns, but also Fred's role at the time would make him more focused on these sort of things than I was because of our respective roles. But I think that although the design standards that are being generated, the study area to which they will initially be applied doesn't extend this far, it will create a regulatory structure that could be applied here. And so I would encourage that this seems to be a logical change to the zoning map. I hear Rob Morris' case and so forth that's been put. It's sound as far as I can see, and that I would be inclined to address Fred's concerns by deploying we imagine soon to be promulgated design standards to include this part of town as well. They're designed for this sort of thing. So I think we can look to the concerns, to safeguarding Fred's concerns by using that strategy.
Rob?
And just to add to that, this is in the local historic district. So, there's a pretty high level of design standards that would be applied to any proposal that happened to a very significant and thorough review of any proposed change that wasn't code related as a result of maintaining these uses at these properties as they currently are.
What are the limitations on the type of business that would be allowed in the BN?
The BN does permit, office space, small commercial activity. The limitations probably would be more on what's available on the site for, it would be subject to off-street parking. So, that's why when I looked at this, potential build out on any of these properties is really minimal. And it truly is, I think, 229, the property all the way to the west that is the most unknown. I think that the Amherst Inn doesn't want to change. They don't have the ability to expand that building. They would be, installing elevators and other things that they're just not interested in. But a two-family property on 20,000 square feet, yeah, it could be 4 units, or it could be, 2 units plus some kind of non-residential use. That property 80 years ago was the home and office of a physician. So there's just that type of potential in the BN district.
Okay. Nate, I want to ask you remind me of the timeline that your target was to try to get this to council by the end of the year, as I recall.
And I have that information if.
Okay. Well, I mean, you know, I'm actually feeling like, gee, if we need to talk about expanding the downtown business district, you know, that's kind of a big conversation. And so I'm feeling sympathetic with Fred actually on you know, gee, I don't want to rush this through at 9 minutes after 10 just to do it. And you know, especially if we're about to talk about you know, expanding the BG, and you know, do we want to expand the BG across the front of the Dickinson homestead? You know, gee, when the homestead was built, there was pasture on these parcels, as I understand it. But you know, I don't know. I'm just one voice, and I'll defer to the majority on this. I don't know how people are feeling, but I know Nate, at least in his preface this evening, wanted to try to get this through tonight.
Right, or yeah, just quickly, the idea would be if the planning board could, you know, make a recommendation to council. You know, given the change in council at the end of the year, the idea is that then, you know, if there is a zoning amendment or anything that would be acted on, it would be a few months before the new council may be ready to vote on it. So, you know, it would just, you know, prolong something if the planning board felt ready.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay. Jesse.
I guess, is there urgency for the Amherst Inn in any way? Like what's the rush besides you guys feeling it's ready? Is there an actual timeline that we need to consider for the properties?
So yeah. I mean, we feel it's ready because we think in the big picture, it's the right thing for these 3 parcels. But the urgency specifically for the inn is that they're under an order, and you know, we've been holding off the fire department's enforcement. You know, it's not a good. I didn't want to, you know, I don't want to emphasize that situation for the purpose of trying to get this, you know, support for this, but it's not good for the business owner. And I don't know if there's a future for the business owner with the limitation of 3 to 4 guests with the 2 owners that live there, and having to install all of the life safety systems that are needed.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. We are in a hearing, so I'm going to offer the public a chance to comment about this proposal. I know it's late, and there's a hand. Nate, can you bring over John Wynn?
Hi, John, you could unmute yourself.
Hello, John.
Good evening, gentlemen. I apologize if I'm a little bit, I'll try and keep this as tight-knit as possible. It's been a long night.
Yes.
So my wife and I took over the running of the inn from the other owner of the property, Ann King, who's been running it for the last 30 years at the beginning of the year. And it's really been a dream come true. It's a fantastic property that complements the Dickinson household very well. We actually have a guest here tonight who said he came to visit the Dickinson Museum 2 years ago and walked out at the end of the tour and looked across the street and said, I have to come back and stay there. So here it is 2 years later, he came back and he's staying here. He visited the museum again, along with the Eric Carle Museum, and patronized a couple restaurants in town and shopped at Amherst Books. So that's kind of the typical guest that we have here on any given night. That being said, the restriction on the capacity really would kill the business. We would not be able to continue long into the future at that rate. So we do hope that you consider this when making your decision. And the more that I've studied what the town is trying to do, and a lot of what you, the board, as well as the town council, are trying to do going forward into the future, to paraphrase some of what I've seen from the master plan, this really is an excellent opportunity for kind of an adaptive reuse of an historic building without changing any of the neighborhood character. We would have no plans to ever change the outside of the house, much because of the reason that I just said with the guests that we had here staying tonight. So we do appreciate your time and your consideration on the matter, and we hope you vote favorably on this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's bring over Mindy Sonner.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I live around the corner from the Amherst Inn. It's been a wonderful addition to the neighborhood and entirely appropriate across the street from the Emily Dickinson house. Why does that have to be tied to the other two parcels? Can you not just change the zoning for that parcel? That's my question.
Well, I'll say that we don't like to do what we call spot zoning.
Yes.
To have individual parcels be different from their neighbors.
Right. So the place on the corner, the odd business building on the corner that is currently a dance studio, that's BN. Then the next building is a large apartment building or a medium apartment building, the one that had the fire and got rebuilt. That could be BN. And then the Amherst Inn could be BN. And then the next building is simply a house. So maybe that's a less clear example. Whereas the apartment building in the Amherst Inn, you would just be extending BN to two parcels that are really kind of already BN, you could argue. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. All right. I don't see any more hands raised. Bruce.
I think I've heard enough to be confident that we should move forward and support the proposition. So I think I would move support of the proposal, and I guess we have to also close the hearing.
So we would recommend to town council that this be adopted?
Correct. Sorry, that's the wording that I should have used.
That's all right. Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Jesse?
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. Jara?
I was going to second it. So.
Okay, so you'll third it.
Yeah.
All right. Any further comments? Any further discussion? All right. Just for fun, we'll start with Jara. Vote in favor or
Aye.
against? Aye. Johanna?
Aye.
Jesse?
Aye.
Angus?
Abstain.
Fred?
No.
Okay, and Bruce?
Aye.
I guess I'm an aye as well. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstention. The motion passes. Thank you all. Thanks to the public that have stayed with us all evening. The time is 10:18. The next item on our agenda is adjournment. Does anybody want to speak before we adjourn? Jesse?
Just to comment, in the 2.5 years I've been on the board, this has been the most mixed voting ever. Non-unanimity. So I applaud that. That's all.
Okay. All right. Thanks everyone for staying with us. We'll see you in December, I guess.
Mhm.
Good night.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you. Bye. Should we want to stop?